When did an idiot say something cringe or incriminating into his microphone mid-game? A group of 5 of us had been doing several runs in World of Warcraft and had been chatting it up the whole time about whatever. One woman's boyfriend came into her room and asked her if, when she was done, if she could take a look under his nether regions. He had a bump on his bag and didn't know if it was a pimple or a boil. He was talking about how much it hurt and itched, and he tried using a mirror but couldn't get the angle right. She let him go on for about 2 to 3 minutes as we were all busting up laughing before she finally told him her mic was on. Oh my god, this happened to me. My press to talk button was stuck, and I'd gotten up to feed the cat. I'd always sing songs for him as I'm feeding him, and apparently my mic picked up everything. So when I got back, my entire raid was singing about my cat, and I was as embarrassed as all heck. I don't sing in public, like, at all. I find it so embarrassing. A kid on PC arguing with his mum because he didn't want dinner. I was so hungry, and his mum sounded sweet. This was like last month on Call of Duty Modern Warfare. The guy was on the phone with his bank accountant, probably, or at least I hope, and he was saying his credit card info, social security, and a bunch of private info. Hopefully he's still safe. Older sister was telling his little brother, our teammate, that it's her time to play and she'll turn off the console if he doesn't get up. He insisted, "Just this one match, please! No! No!" and disconnected. Lol. So basically, me and 3 other guys on Discord. One was living with his parents and grandparents. His grandpa barges into his room and after mumbling something he yelled, "Pull down your pants!" The guy was just wearing some dirty pants, but we fully misunderstood the situation. Or you didn't misunderstand the conversation and you just way too readily accepted your friend's explanation? Nah, I'm kidding. It was probably just one of those spontaneous colonoscopist visits like that guy who burst into my house the other day. Weird that I never got the results for that exam. Here we go. I have a story for this one. So me and my friend, let's call him Ben, had a goal a while back to complete every achievement in Minecraft on the X-Bone. We put nearly 300 hours into the world, and whenever we'd play, his girlfriend would always go on her phone to help pass the time. This one particular evening, we were building my house, well, more of a tower, and he starts placing random blocks in places where they aren't supposed to be. I asked if he was okay, and he said that he was fine and carried on building. As time went on, his breathing got progressively heavier, until about 5 minutes later I asked if his girl was going south of the border on him. What I didn't know is that he was in fact getting a down-under kiss, and he was getting close to arriving, until his girlfriend heard me over the mic and started laughing and ruined the moment. I'm sorry, Ben, but I think that's a lesson learned not to multitask. Obviously, Minecraft is more important. Not bad, but memorable. I got to my buddy's house and he was playing Call of Duty. He has his headset on. This house is a work in progress, so every time I get there, something's changed. I walk into his gaming room and see that he's made some modifications to the house and I ask him about them. He proceeds to give me a lesson on construction fundamentals and building technique and the why and why not. After about 5 or so minutes, he realizes that he was mic'd the whole time and he goes, "Oh crap," and someone chimes in, "Hey, so that was actually really interesting and all, but can you guys shut the frick up?" I don't think we've ever laughed as hard as that. I don't have any as weird as the ones here, but I definitely recall one time getting ready to pull a raid boss in World of Warcraft and hearing one kid's mother yell at him to take out the trash. The kid was 16 or something, and all 24 of us were like, "Nope, not pulling yet, go take out the trash for your mum." I also have a friend who used to fall asleep on Discord after taking Ambien, and some of those conversations were hilarious, but I'm pretty sure he knows where I live and will unalive me if I share them here. I caught my friend tickling his pickle on mic thinking that he'd muted himself. I heard him groaning and then I shouted, "No climaxes in my party." My boyfriend never has his mic on, but one of the rare times he was talking to his friend, his dad came around the corner to feed his sister's bunnies, his sister being away at college, and sang the song he always sings at the top of his lungs when he goes to feed them. "Bunny, bunny, bunny, bunnies!" in falsetto. Years ago, Halo 3. My cat was being unusually affectionate and cuddly. I fragged a guy in multiplayer and was distracted by the cat. I start asking, who has a fuzzy belly? Who's my fuzzy girl? And it turned out the guy I killed could still hear my voice and he was having none of it. I wish I still had the Xbox Live message he sent. He seemed really insecure about his fuzzy belly. I was playing Rainbow Six Vegas a whole while back, got myself a few friends in, and also had a couple of stragglers. We were pretty decent as a team, we'd not lost for a few days, although playtime had only been a few hours due to work. Anyway, these stragglers who joined got added to our chat. I talked strategy with them and they seemed alright. 2 brothers from Georgia. We start playing and we're abseiling down the roof, running through casinos, and everything is going well. Our squad are racking up kills, but one of the stragglers keeps dying. His brother is complaining. The guy who keeps dying grabs the briefcase and runs. We're calling to get him to come to the lift shafts, but he ignored us, runs straight to the windows and gets taken out. Drops the case in a room packed full of enemies. We can't get it in time, we lose. The useful brother starts complaining and muttering under his breath, then talks loudly, like we couldn't hear him before, and says sorry for his brother's mistake. We'll win now. We switch to defense. The useless brother runs straight out of the vault despite telling him to wait at the back stairs, goes and gets killed again. His brother is mumbling again, clearly agitated. Now the useful brother is defending the case. Anyone who gets past the 3 main defense points, he's picking them off and just doing great. The case never leaves our sight, and this is all despite the back stairs not being covered. Useless brother sees someone else in the case room, decides to throw a flashbang. We all get blinded. Look around and the case is gone. As we're going chasing after it, the useless brother apologizes. His brother says, "Whatever," and in his mumble voice, he seemingly thinks that no one can hear him say, "This kind of crap is why I went number 2 in your gym bag." The character of the useless bro stops dead in front of me as we're chasing the enemy. Then there's a loud noise from the other bro's mic, followed by what sounded like the biggest slap, open palm strike that I've ever heard. Useful bro's character suddenly stops too. Me and my squad are laughing, wondering what's going on, as we lose the game, and on the mics we can just hear one of the bros crying. And then a Georgian mum shouting in the distance. It wasn't really a "this dude forgot to turn off his mic" moment, but rather he was trying to play it off as if it was. I was playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare when one of my teammates, Jason, died, and was left to spectate me. After a while he said he had to leave and then proceeded to moan loudly. At first I thought he was just cranking it, until he leaned into the mic and in the worst girl voice you can imagine said, "Man, I can't believe Jason has a 7-inch eggplant." I just laughed uncontrollably and he responded with, I'm sorry man, I was getting busy." I mean, if you're gonna lie, why stop at 7 inches? Well, one time my husband and I started getting frisky after he was killed in a match. Got a text from his brother who he was playing with like 10 minutes later, telling us to turn off his mic. Back in the Halo 2 days, a teen was getting yelled at to get off the game. He called his mum the B-word and she responded with a butt-whooping that sounded like a hyena getting mauled by 50 cats in a plywood box. This teen's kid brother actually got on during the beatdown saying, "Oh, hell yeah, he never lets me play." The little man was actually pretty good fun from what I remember too. Chillin' in squad when someone doesn't have push to talk on and they start yelling at their family and occasionally letting out a giant scream from dying. Yeah, sorry about that, I have push to talk now and I no longer live with my family. Now my only problem is that I suck at any and all games and my neighbors still complain about my screaming when I die. Was playing on a CSGO server, this squeaker comes in the server acting all tough, trash-talking, mocking other people. Now, it's about 11 at night right now and we hear this kid saying, "But mommy, I don't want to go to sleep, I want to play." We all start laughing our butts off and he disconnected. Years ago, I was playing Gears of War on Xbox Live, and this kid joined my game. From the sound of his voice, he couldn't have been older than 12 or 13, but he was talking trash the whole time. You know, the usual stuff. "You suck, you're gay, fudge your mom," etc. Apparently his mum walked in while he was in the middle of throwing yet another one of his dumb insults at me and his mic was on. She came in and was like, "What? What are you saying? Is that how I raised you?" There was a slapping sound. Huh? You gonna talk like that again? Answer me, did I raise you like that?" More slaps. And he's crying and saying, "Mama, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Mama, please, let me finish my game." And she's like, "Aw, hell no, you're not finished nothing." And then he's dropped out of the game. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. It's not necessarily him forgetting to turn his mic off, but him not being able to. It's been several years and it could just have been a hoax, but it certainly shook me up. I believe it was around the time of Halo 3. I'd been on Xbox Live, fooling around in Mapmaker with some buddies. One of them had been dealing with a rough home life and often talked about his fear that his parents were into some trouble with other people. Being kids, me and the other guy brushed it aside as just nonsense. But one day we were playing and we hear a loud bang from his mic. He was yelling at his mum and then there were multiple loud bangs in quick succession, almost like someone had been firing a piece on full auto. We hadn't heard him over the sounds, but when they stopped, his tone of voice changed and it sounded more like a sobbing, yelling for his mum. My buddy and I were shook now, trying to find out what the frick happened. We could just hear sobbing and he wasn't returning to the game, and after about 10 or 15 minutes of no contact from him, he just disconnected and we'd never heard from him since. Just today I was playing Modern Warfare and this guy on my team had his mic open. His phone rang in the background and he picked up to his wife talking about how he needs to get off his butt and go to the store. He led with profanities and ended up with, "Fine, witch," and went back to just playing. I said into the game chat, "So, are you gonna go to the store?" Unfazed, he said, "Nah." Some guy confessing his love to a girl and then singing a song to her. It worked in the end. We all cheered for him. Basically, my friend. He always keeps his mic on, and this one time I heard his parents arguing in the background, and he literally screamed, "Yay, 2 Christmases!" And then there was silence. Oh god, I was that guy once. Nothing scandalous, just embarrassing. You know how sometimes couples will be all sugary sweet lovey-dovey to each other when they're alone, in a way that they'd probably not do in front of other people because it's so cringy? Don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about, people in relationships. Anyway, I had my headset on and I was being a typical idiot with my friends. My then partner was nearby, so I took off the headset, forgot to mute the mic, and commenced the instant transformation into this over-the-top cutesy love kitten. You can imagine how much I wanted to crawl under a rock and die a few minutes later. That was like 12 years ago. I've been extra careful about the mic from then on. I was playing World of Warcraft with a friend and he was teaching me the basics. My mum comes into my room and yells in the heaviest smoker accent possible, "What up, lads?" What she said next was interrupted because I ripped out my microphone. My friend was frightened for a good minute, thinking someone had broken into my house. Someone with an open mic instructing his girlfriend to give him a down-under kiss. I was playing a game after a few beers once and I was that dude. Me and the ex were talking crap around the house. We were weird, we'd broken up after she grew up and I didn't. Like, it was really weird. We'd make weird noises around the house in some sort of ritual. Seagull noises, cat noises, poor imitations of weapons going off. And here's what my group would have heard. First her making a cat noise, she had a really realistic meow. Then me, gotta go help my partner with something. Followed by me trying and failing for some reason to drop group. Then her meowing, getting more insistent. Then me going then her abruptly turning the meow into a gurgle, then a perfectly normal conversation about food, except for a couple of weird words thrown in. Then I heard snickering coming from my PC. He started reading out loud to himself a particularly racy, furry anime novel featuring many, many tentacles. A friend of ours had a full-on seizure while we were in voice chat. We just hung around for about half an hour listening to him breathing and making sure he's okay, and after he recovered and spoke to us a few days later, we got info of family near him to call if it happens again. That stuff is super scary because we all knew he was having one, but we couldn't do anything and don't even know if we're listening to him die or not. It was a video call on Zoom, but one guy literally turned his camera on, picked his nose, ate it, and then turned his camera back off. Repeatedly. He turned his camera on and off repeatedly too, and he completely looked like it was just some subconscious thing. Do you think he missed a click at some point and thought he was actually turning it off to do that? Or was this the ultimate power play? Like he was staring at the camera the whole time while this happened? I usually play Sea of Thieves in the morning, and since my friends don't have the game, I pick up players from Xbox Live posts. Keep in mind I live in Greece and our time zone is semi-opposite with America's. In other words, my morning is a very late night to my teammates. This results in meetings with many interesting people such as substance addicts and even a substance dealer once. Or drunk people. I don't even know, whatever. But my personal award would go to the guy who was pretty chill when playing and was sounding like he was fairly close to my age. I'm 18. He was actually a pretty cool guy and we had fun for a couple of hours. Then at some point we heard a younger girl's voice saying that the baby has waken up again in a sleepy voice. The dude apologized and said he'd be right back. Then he proceeded to sing to the baby until the baby slept, which I found rather cute, and plus there was nothing going on in-game since we were in the middle of our journey, so the rest of the crew didn't mind either. And as a side note, the guy had a nice voice. Anyway, when he came back, we were about to tease him, but the first thing he said was, "Sorry, I had to put my son to sleep." Which raised some questions because the guy sounded serious, and we all stood in silence because, like I said, he sounded fairly young. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't ask too many questions because I respect someone's private life, but the guy was very open about it to me, so me and another crewmate were intrigued. Turns out he was 17 and his girl, the voice from before, was 16. They had a protection incident and ended up with their 4-month-old son, but they were very happy about it. Some moments passed and crewmate number 4 was fairly quiet this whole time, and his character wasn't moving. We asked if everything was okay and we got no response. But after a while we heard some snorting coming from crewmate number 4's mic. We couldn't stop laughing, and the next day crewmate number 4 admitted that the song made him go to sleep despite his best efforts. He had a wireless headset and proceeded to go number 2. Then he went, "I'm back." Clearly didn't mute his mic like he thought he had. I wasn't playing or watching the live stream, but during an iRacing event, NASCAR driver Kyle Larson didn't realize his mic was on for the entire group and therefore was being broadcasted via Twitch. And he said, "Can anybody hear me? Hey, N-word." The very next day, he lost his real-life NASCAR sponsors and his real-life ride. He was part of the drive for a diversity program, a program dedicated to attracting minorities and women to NASCAR. Bro, imagine losing your career on iRacing. Okay, so this one was actually on me. I first got Call of Duty 3 from PS4 a while back. I was a serious squeaker, so eventually I joined my first online match and was getting whooped. I kid you not, my mum was making tater tots that night and proceeded to yell, loud enough for my dinky little earbud mic to pick up. "Owen, your tater tots are ready!" Not my proudest moment, but I still laugh at it. I was in a raid and one of the healers speaks up in the middle of a fight and says, "Oh crap, I've got to go." The guild leader was understandably all, "What? Why?" And my dude just responded, "Tornado." He forgot to turn his mic off, so he heard the sounds of wind and the building shaking in the background until the sound of wood cracking and the audio just went absolutely insane. The guild leader had to mute him at that point. He turned out to be okay, but we didn't find that out for a week or two after the event. Years ago, World of Warcraft was still only vanilla and raids needed 40 people. Our guild was quite tight with each other, even with about 60 people in it. So the jokes could get personal, but still have heart. One time we went raiding, and in the middle of it a guy asks for a quick break. Less than 5 minutes, he said. Raid leader said, "Okay, let's have a short break then for everyone." Well, everyone went to the loo and grabbed a drink and refilled the side snacks, all done within 5 minutes. Except that guy. He still had his mic on too, so suddenly someone hears something and tells us to be quiet. 39 people on TeamSpeak, we went silent and started to listen to the guy doing the deed with his girlfriend. All from start to end. And every one of us in silence with the occasional giggle on certain moments. During the deed, they said the most cliché things to each other, things like how bad of a girl she is, deserving of his rooster, how she wants him to go faster, deeper, and so on, plus the occasional butt slap, of course. After about 15 minutes, he came back and we all tried to be normal. So did he. Our raid leader said that he was late, but he apologized, saying that his mother had called. We all laughed, and he was at first confused, but understood what had happened. He was very ashamed, and we had a good laugh. The extra part in this, we had a couple of minors in the raid and some of them came to me in the days after to talk about it. I was the oldest female in the guild and some of them called me the guild mother. They were confused about the cliches and name-calling during the deed, so I had a lot of explaining to do. I was raiding Blackrock Foundry in World of Warcraft. We pull a boss and one of our hunters is standing there doing nothing. She dies and her mic comes on. All we hear is super loud moaning and gasping. She's quickly removed from the server and we down the boss. About 10 minutes later, she rejoins the server and goes, "Sorry, my boyfriend decided to frick me right before we pulled." Our guildmaster kicked her on the spot. Apparently, this was not the first time it had happened. Wolf Kitty, if you're still out there, thank you for this story. Hikers and park rangers, what's the scariest thing you run into in the woods? A few years ago, my brother and I were camping in Colorado. He heard a twig snap somewhere nearby and he wakes me up. We scan with our headlamps and see a huge pair of eyes staring at us through some willows. I figured it must be a bear. It kept staring at us for about 5 minutes until we turned off the lights. We were going to move camp back towards some other groups. All of a sudden, a massive moose comes charging out of the willows. Luckily, it veered off before it collided with our tent. Another time, I was hiking a trail I hike regularly with my dog, but it was totally deserted because of some rain. She was ahead of me, maybe 20 yards, when she comes to a dead stop and beelines it back down the trail, completely ignoring my calls. As I chase her, I notice an unmistakable mountain lion print. I was hiking the Adirondacks with my ex on a trail that was a loop around a lake with one trailhead exit. Early spring, so a lot of trail cleanup hadn't begun yet. We're walking about halfway to check out this waterfall and I hear this rumbling sound that sounds like an animal stomping the ground towards us. I then hear this bizarre, rapidly increasing growl that sounds like what Hollywood uses for alien noises and fricking book it. My boyfriend tells me to hold up, but I'm crapping myself. I'm out of breath and refuse to go back the way we entered the trail. We have to march through this thick bog that was pulling our boots off to get through the other side to exit the loop. We get to the car and I'm crying at this point. The previous day was spent vomiting and eating bad food. Next vacation, we're going to a city, I moped. We'd been in the Adirondacks for the past 4 vacations and honestly this experience beat me down. Years later, I was listening to nature sounds on the internet and I hear that growl. A chill went up my spine. I learned that's a real thing. It was a mating call of a ruffed grouse bearing its wings on its chest. Yep, I freaked out because of a randy bird. I was in archaeological field school, living in a tent for 6 weeks at 7,500 feet, and the closest paved road was 10 miles away. One night, I woke up to a huffing, snorting kind of sound right outside my tent. Next thing I know, whatever it was bumping my head. I froze for a second, then on pure instinct, I did an overhead punch. Definitely felt contact. Whatever it was, it went away. This was on the US Forest Service grazing land, so it could have been a cow with insomnia, but it could have also been a mountain lion or black bear. Wasn't even tempted to go out and see what it was. I preferred the safety of my tent. I was hiking in a national forest with my wife and dog. The first couple of miles of trail led to a waterfall and swimming hole, so it was fairly well populated with people. We decided to hike past the waterfall, which involved a bit of a climb, enough at least to keep most people from going past the waterfall. We hiked another mile or two without seeing a single person. This whole time, my dog was having a great time, happy to be in the woods and happy to walk 30 miles if we let her. Suddenly, in a particularly dense part of the trail, she stopped suddenly and stared straight ahead. She absolutely would not move another inch forward. We stopped and listened but couldn't hear or see anything unusual. The dog, though, started whining and trying to pull us on the leash back up the trail toward the swimming hole. I had never before or seen since my dog act this way, but I believe she was legitimately afraid of whatever was ahead of us. Maybe there was a bear on the trail, or a coyote, or maybe a serial killer was hiding in the woods. I'll never know because we listened to our dog and decided to get the frick out of there as fast as we could. Who knows, maybe we avoided some gruesome death deep in the woods. I'm beginning to think that a good proportion of these will either be bear-related or people being scared by the possibility of bears. Place your bets below for what percentage rate of the stories will contain Winnie the Pooh's distant cousins. Desert Park Ranger here. Volunteers at one of my parks called us to report a still smoldering, smoking car in one of our remote campsites. It was normal for stolen cars to get abandoned and burned. We went to look and gawked a few minutes while waiting for the fire department. After a couple of minutes standing there, it became very apparent there was a body in the front seat. After an additional look around, food wrappers, rope, numerous other strange items were found. It seemed like whoever was in the front seat had been bound and shot. Police came and cleaned it up, didn't find any answers. We refer to that as the haunted site now. It's the most popular in that tiny park. One of our cubicle farm chiefs got a call from a guy threatening to take his own life. He said he'd had a lot of weapons and was going to end it, then gave the location close to our park. 2 of my co-workers got sent out to investigate. By the time they got there, another rangering entity had found the scene first. They told my co-workers to leave before there was a ton of complicated paperwork that they'd have to do. The guy had shot himself semi-successfully and then tried to walk for help. Large cleanup scene, felt bad for the responding park ranger. She wasn't with us, but had just dealt with her husband, another ranger, taking his own life the month before. She also found his body. But by far the scariest thing I ran into, I just moved out there and was taking care of 2 parks by myself, both closed. These parks are about 30 miles from the nearest occupied houses, and even then, those couple of homes are usually empty in the summertime. I decided to hop in my car and drive to the darker park to take in a meteor shower and learn to play my banjo, because that is totally normal and not creepy at all. I'm out there on a picnic table, plucking away, terribly, under the stars, and got this really uneasy feeling. Was that a shadow? What if someone shows up? What if someone's listening and starts singing? This is the burned car park. What if they came back? As I'm drowning in the silence with occasional string plucks to distract myself, I hear muffled voices in the brush, quick mumbles, then rustling. My heart dropped and my neck grew cold. There is no way this will be a normal interaction. My eyes struggle with the dark, scanning bushes, trying to find the shapes. The sounds grow closer and seem eerily high-pitched. Children? What the frick? Park ranger dies of a heart attack, found 3 days later still clutching banjo will be a good headline. That is the day I learned that coyotes have the run of the desert and don't worry about being quiet. 3 of them, bound through the creosote bushes with a yip or two, passed close by me. No fricks given. This is the last time I ever played my banjo there. The Trailside Killer. In Northern California, late 70s, hiking with a friend, and I came across him at a rock outcropping on Mount Tam. He gave off a very discomforting vibe and we didn't hang around. We both independently recognized him when he was finally captured a few years later, and his picture was in the paper. If I'd been with my girlfriend, we might not be alive. He was a creepy-looking dude. A charming-looking fellow. I worked as a tree planter in northern Ontario, living in tents in very remote parts of the forest, like hours away from civilization, only accessible by logging roads. Strangest was from a fellow planter who found a backpack in the middle of this area with shoes, clothes, a wallet with a school ID, and a film camera. How it ended up there is a total mystery because this is no place for hiking or camping. Scariest for myself was waking up to my tent vestibule collapsed and a large bear claw rip which I apparently slept through, as well as turning a corner to a large wolf about 10 feet away, and returning to a spot I'd planted about 5 minutes earlier to fresh mama and bear cub prints. Realizing a bear family had sauntered behind me while my back was turned was very unsettling because you do not want to mess with a bear and her cubs. Canadian wildlife is scary, yo. The most surreal experience I had was during an off-trial hike in the Rockies in Colorado. I was extremely depressed and spending a day away from an awful ex. I wasn't really sure what my plan was, but I fell on my butt through ice into a shallow stream and I was crossing and just said, frick it. I'm not going back to my car. Well, just near the top of a steep hill, I almost stepped on some sort of leg bone. I was like, oh crap, that's cool. Until about 3 feet away, I saw several more limb bones and most of a spine between a couple of mounds. I didn't see fresh blood, but was certain it was regular territory for something that could frick me up. I kind of froze and looked around me since I didn't hear anything so far. I decided to get a few pics and then slowly left down the hill. About halfway down, I turned back up the hill because I figured I was overthinking it, and I really didn't want to go home. About 5 steps back up, and I definitely heard some sort of animal walking around the top of the hill. And I didn't stick around to see it. I slipped in the water again on my way out, though. Bears were just chilling out in our campsite in New Mexico in the middle of the night making sounds. One random guy, not in our group, literally just gets out, grabs a stick, and chases them out while screaming. Man, that guy was wild. Didn't see, but heard. My husband and I were hiking in a state park in the East Coast. It was midday during the work week, so we maybe encountered 2 other people the 3 hours we were out and about. The only sounds we heard were from ourselves, our dog, and some birds or animals. All of a sudden, I hear mild chanting. I asked my husband if he heard it too, and he nodded but signaled for me to be quiet. My dog's ears were at full alert and the hair on his back was standing straight up. We continued walking, and the noises turned into full-blown monk chanting. Think Halo Gregorian chant. It was clear as day, like I was standing right next to a speaker. To make myself feel better, I convinced myself some teens were hiding down there somewhere playing it on their phones. After 5 minutes of hearing it, it disappeared and we barely spoke a word for the last 3 miles back. Still creeps me out. There was an episode of Paranormal Witness that had this exact thing happen to some people in the woods by their house. There was absolutely no one around. Nope. I live in a beach community with a maritime forest nearby, and while hiking about 40 years ago, I found a huge sea turtle hanging by its neck from a tree. I bet the shell was 4 feet across. I figured someone was hoping to recover the shell after the flesh had rotted away, but I don't think the neck was going to hold up for that long. Definitely weird. I mean, surely that violates some sort of environmental protection law. I just hope that someone found an already deceased turtle to do that to, rather than killing one. Surrounded by crystal heads in an Australian national park at night, with no signal, they stopped us in our car at the gate. Maybe 5 of them hopped out and surrounded the car. Asked us if we knew where they could get any. I had my Big Becca BK knife by my side. Thankfully, they left. Working in a rainforest in Southeast Asia many years ago, one of the things we did was trap moths at night. You would sit in front of a big white sheet, with a lamp in front of it, powered by a generator, and then periodically go and see what insects had attached to the sheet. Incidentally, the insects attracted frogs, which attracted snakes, which attracted bigger things. Due to the noise and light, the trap was about a mile away from camp, so you'd be there at 3 a.m., all alone in the middle of a jungle. One cloudy night there wasn't much happening at the 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. shift. I heard a rustle in the woods beside me. This wasn't unusual, but it was a bit bigger than I was used to hearing. The rustle came closer, and I started getting tense. It got closer still, and I was starting to think I was going to get mauled by a tiger. Suddenly, a disembodied face broke out of the tree line, screaming in an unintelligible language. I practically crapped myself, screamed a little, and the disembodied face disappeared back into the wood, issuing high-pitched giggles. It was only after my heart slowed that I realized one of the local lumberjacks had given me a jump scare using a torch under their face for spooky lighting. I wasn't even mad. It was hilarious. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. It was 3 a.m. and everyone was KO'd in their tents. I was awoken by the sound of someone, or something, walking around my tent. I hear a distant but blood-curdling scream. For the next 30 minutes, I see a light waving around outside. I thought about going out to investigate, but didn't want to die. It took me a few hours to fall asleep. The next day, it turns out a cub was poking around our campsite. My friend was hammock camping, which probably piqued the cub's curiosity. It poked a claw through the hammock and left a sizable gash on his elbow. My friend said he didn't fall asleep for 2 hours and kept shining his flashlight around in case the cub returned with its mother or something. This happened about 6 feet away from me. Was on a camping trip in the Boundary Waters in Minnesota, and we woke up in the middle of the night to this incredibly loud slap and a splash out in the middle of the lake. Sound carries really well across water. Our first fear was that someone was shooting at us, and that was absolutely terrifying. Then we heard it again, a bit closer, and one of the guys realized it was a fricking beaver slapping its tail on the water before it dove below. My last trip up there, I was awoken from a midday nap by my buddies sing-songily screaming, "Bear!" Turns out we had made camp in the middle of a berry patch, and a bear was having a feast about 10 feet from my head. Was camping with my Boy Scout troop at the time, and woke during the middle of the night to footsteps and breathing. It got louder and more footsteps started. My bunkmates were up too at this point. Then we start to hear huffing and animal noises. Turns out the field our campsite was at was in the middle of an apparent cow crossing. Had to be at least 30 of them walking by at once. Definitely a scary moment to wake up to in the middle of the night, hearing a million footsteps and animal noises. FYI, cow pies were everywhere the next morning. A pack of dogs ran up on my wife and I while hiking out of the Grand Canyon at about 3 a.m. Very, very dark outside. Her and I had headlamps. We stopped, they stopped. All I saw was a bunch of glowing eyes and bushy-tailed silhouettes. After a beat, I realized they were working dogs for the reservation, so I just went, "Hey, puppers!" in the same voice I use for my dog, and they immediately went on their way. Ended up not being dangerous really, but I almost crapped myself. Was in the Big Bend National Park about 20 years ago prepping for a backpacking series presentation for REI. Big Bend is the western portion of Texas that dips downward along the bend of the Rio Grande that forms the border with Mexico. It's mixed high desert and smaller mountains, gorgeous place with a great history. I was hiking the area near Santa Elena Canyon, probably a couple of hours before sunset to try and get pics for the presentation. This area of the park opens into the comparatively flat sections of the basin, where the river broadens and the wildlife tends to be more diverse and obvious there. Hence, there I was. I was several hundred meters away from my van, which was parked in a designated lot at what passed for a trailhead at the time. As I approached the river basin near the mouth of the canyon, I saw something really unusual. So unusual, in fact, that it took a few seconds for my brain to sort the puzzle. Something was moving on the other side of the river, and it was big, man-sized, but low to the ground. The color of a deer, maybe? And shuffling along. It looked, for first impression, to be a medium-sized white-tailed doe lying on its side and moving like a snake, but that's not a thing that happens, so I moved closer to improve my line of sight. It was a mountain lion, a big cat. A big cat. It was creeping along, low-slung, hunting something that was probably no more than a stone's toss from where I was standing. I'd never seen one before, and when the visual information finally passed, I think my blood froze. Then it looked at me. I'll probably never forget that bit. You could see the little calorie calculator turning on in its eyes. I've never been so thankful for a river in my life. Granted, at this time, and maybe still, the river was very low due to drought and unauthorized, unlawful irrigation practices upstream, and you could likely cross at several points at this location with minimal risk, but it was still quite broad and definitely looked the part of a potent water barrier. Death Kitty does a series of double takes, head shifting from me to whatever the prey's location is back and forth rapidly, said calorie counter and risk calculator, trying to get a fix on this evening's menu. I die a little, maintain my facing, and begin slowly and quietly moving away. Not sure if I wasn't worth it, if the river was too much of an X factor, or if the big un just really wasn't that into me, but no chase was given, and after breaking line of sight, I was able to get back to the van just fine, with no sign of pursuit and some mild tachycardia. That was the longest short walk I've ever taken. Later that night, I was parked off the main park road in an area where big cats commonly hunted. I'll always remember being parked there, in the middle of nowhere, munching on slightly stale Oreos and a bottle of water, listening to the occasional growl or scream of a big cat peel out of the darkness, and being thankful for my relatively fortunate position on the food chain. Also, one night I hallucinated on NyQuil, a side effect I regularly experienced with the quills, after getting a respiratory illness, and I woke up screaming, at a mountain, at 3 a.m., at the public campsite. But that's someone else's scary camping story. Oh no, yeah, I don't care that big cats normally don't bother attacking humans. If I saw one of those, I would be sprinting for my life. Sorry, kitty, you shall not taste the flesh of YouTube narrator today. Not really a park, but we were camped on a remote beach in Northern Australia on an Aboriginal reserve. We had special permits. When we woke up in the morning, we noticed a huge trail dragging footprint where a croc had walked by our tent during the night. The croc was on the other side of the bay, assuming it was the same croc, and must have been at least 6 meters long. We packed and moved. I went running through a trail near my house one afternoon, headphones in and my mind elsewhere, just because I knew the path really well. I came around a bend, through the gap in the trees about 20 feet in front of me, I locked eyes with a dead and rotting deer. Somehow it was postured in a way that made it look as though the corpse was staring through me. I turned and bolted out as fast as I possibly could. You should watch the movie The Ritual. Frick that movie. Still creeps the crap out of me that there are these kinds of woods where it's some kind of curse and of being guarded by some not-of-this-world kind of beast. I'm not a ranger, but I've hiked parts of the Appalachian Trail. This occurred in West Virginia, I believe. Happened about 8 years ago. Was hiking with a group. We spread out naturally based on hiking speed. I was in the middle-ish group of 4 of us, and one person had to stop to pull a tick off. Other 2, one leader, stayed with them, but I decided to hike on ahead and see if I could catch up with the lead group. The AT is extremely well marked with white blazes, so I wasn't worried about getting lost. I knew the next landmark was an old logging road, and sure enough, I hit it about a mile later. I decided I should wait for the rest of the group to catch up, so while waiting, I hiked a bit down the old overgrown road which ran perpendicular to the trail. There was a low stone wall along one side, and I was strolling along it, checking for anything interesting like artifacts and stuff, when it was like I crossed an invisible line. All of a sudden, it was like sound cut off. No birds or insects called, when seconds ago there had been multiple birds singing. Even leaves on the trees around me stopped rustling. It was just this sudden, unnatural, deafening silence. For whatever reason, I took a few more hesitant steps forward until I hit this invisible wall. It was like suddenly I was barraged by this feeling. I can only describe it as an intense unwelcome, as if I'd entered the house of someone I knew hated me, but multiplied by about 100. All of the hairs on my body stood straight up. I stopped dead in my tracks. The feeling was so strong that I didn't even want to turn my back. I couldn't see anything down the road, threatening or otherwise, that would give me this feeling, but I knew I had to leave immediately. I just knew I was not meant to be there, and if I stayed, something bad would happen. So I walked backwards slowly, never turning away from the road and trying really hard not to even blink. Finally, I crossed that invisible line again and I could hear birds singing and the leaves rustling. I didn't turn around until I heard the leader I'd left earlier asking me if there was anything cool down the road. I was like, nope, let's keep on going. Looking back, I figure it was a bear or a cougar or something just out of sight that my instincts managed to pick up on, but at the time, damn, it just felt creepy and almost paranormal. The silhouette of a massive humanoid figure, round head, no snout, at dusk, moving through the foliage at ridiculous speed. It was extremely loud, branches swinging, sticks snapping. Instinctively, I fled by foot, even though it wasn't coming in my direction. Left my ATV behind in the process. I was driven back later with others to retrieve it. Never saw it again, still don't know what it was. I was working at a remote mountaintop microwave radio site near Prince Rupert, BC in January. The road to the site was impassable even by snowcat due to deep snowdrifts. I had to be dropped off by helicopter in the morning and get picked up at the end of the day. The building was small, single story, maybe 30 by 40 feet, windowless with a metal front door. I'm puttering away with music on, but otherwise not making a lot of noise when there's a knock on the door. I thought it was a bit odd that someone else would be up here with me, but I go to answer the door. Nobody there. I go out and look around. Nope, nothing, no prints or tracks. I figured maybe some ice had fallen and made a knocking sound. I go back inside and resume what I was doing. A couple of minutes later, there's a knocking on the door again, but longer duration this time. I open the door. Nobody. I go out and look around. Nothing. Go back to work. A minute later, knocking again. This time it sounds like someone is angrily pounding on the door to be let in. This time I open the door with my crowbar in hand. There was no doubt someone was there. Open the door and nobody. What the frick? Step out and look around, no sign of anyone again. I get the feeling someone is watching me. I'm peering into the bush around me and I see nothing. Something compelled me to look behind me, and that's when I met the amused gaze of a raven, perched on the roof edge, centered above the front door. They squawked a happy "rock, rock, rock," and flapped off to the tree line. Butthole. What's the first thing you realized after moving out of your parents' home? How beautiful the double-edged sword of freedom is. You can do whatever you want, but you have no safety net. If you don't manage everything, your life will happily run itself off the rails in a ton of tiny, insidious ways. Yep, it's crazy how quickly the crap hits the fan sometimes. Since leaving home, I have a whole new respect for my parents. Life is hard. I thought I could live on £350 until Christmas, so I took it out of my savings account and put it in my current account. Spent £9 a week on food at Iceland and Lidl, £2 on new socks, £8 on a new memory stick for uni, and I had to buy an Arduino for programming, which cost £60, and roughly £10 on drinks for a few nights in. That was all of my purchases. Spent just over £110 in 3 weeks and my account was completely empty. Where's the £350 gone? There was also £112 a week in rent, which I somehow forgot about. Lesson learned. That I finally had no one to explain myself to. I want to go out at 2 a.m., just walk out the door. I come home at 4 a.m., just walk in the door. I come home drunk with my own spew all over myself, just go in the toilet and question my existence while I clean up. Basically what I was going to say, except with the ending that you finally realize that it's nice to go to work and school not tired after you have no reason to stay out late and avoid your parents. Yep, now you're avoiding your roommates. And someday, if you're lucky, you'll be avoiding your spouse. Chicken doesn't have to be dry. Spaghetti sauce doesn't have to come from a can. Love my folks, but they are not chefs by any means. My mom thinks that chicken that is even a little juicy is raw and makes me burn her piece to perfection. It's so annoying. My mom is the same way. Chicken is pure white and juicy? She looks at it intently. Can you throw mine back on the grill? It's pink. I can see pink. Yeah, well, I'm seeing red, so hop in the oven yourself. Yeah, when I visit, my mum gets teed off at me because apparently I turn every meal into a production. My bad for making sure it's all fresh and tastes good. Wow, it's super easy to get fat. I've had the opposite. Without my mum pushing second helpings on me and trying to save money on food, I eat a far better number of calories for my lifestyle. Not sure the food is any healthier or worse for me though. I guess it depends on the upbringing. If you have a mother who cooked portions for anorexic baby birds like some mothers, the food and its costs could well get on top of you. That I wasn't the messy one. When the person you're living with makes no effort to keep a place tidy, there's no incentive for you to either. You're either picking up two people's messes or picking up your own, but still feeling like it's always messy, so what's the point? After I move out, my apartment never has clutter, never has dishes in the sink, gets vacuumed regularly, etc. My mum's house, on the other hand, is still a disaster. People really scared me about bills. Oh, you're going to have to pay bills every month, and it'll be the worst. Sure, it's not super nice having to take money and give it to various people at regular intervals, but it's not stressful. Living with my parents was way more stressful than paying bills has ever been. Back in the day, when you can't find your bill in the mail, people start stressing hard. A lot of old people still don't know they can pay online, or just don't know how to use autopay. I mean, I have the mild annoyance that I can't get everything to autopay from my credit card. There's always one or two that are like, what the frick is Visa? It's nice being able to jerk it in my room with sound. Did your parents forbid the use of headphones? No, but you had to be able to hear them approaching. A small thing, but I have two younger brothers who are always quite greedy and selfish with food. My mum would buy a limited amount of snack food, and once it was gone until the next big food shop. My brothers would dive in like locusts and eat all of the crisps, chocolate, ice cream, or whatever and leave nothing for me. It's been 10 years since I moved out, and I never stop being happy that the chocolate I bought a week ago and I'm looking forward to after work is still there when I get home. It's nice having control over your own stuff. I have 5 siblings, so my when I grow up fantasy was literally to buy a bag of Sun Chips and eat the entire thing by myself. It took me a year after moving out of my parents' house to do it. I think on some level I was still convinced it would disappear. I have 4 future stepchildren. I stopped buying junk food because one of them will eat it all in 2 days. This leaves nothing for the other 3, and she's already overweight at 12. Now they only get fresh fruit and cheese sticks for snacks. We also have one homemade sugary treat on Saturday. It was this or individual locked boxes for each kid. I think you're doing the right thing. Don't make a fuss over the overeater and just include healthy foods. When they're adults buying and prepping their own foods, they can make their own mistakes. It's so fricking quiet. The first night I looked up at my ceiling and I actually had silence. I was so happy it was hard to sleep that night. Oh my god, you can have this magnificent, absolute silence whenever you want. On the flip side, it can sometimes get very lonely if you don't have a lot going on with the rest of your social life. I went a few months without a roommate and it's nice for sure, but sometimes laying there at night is weird. You can't just walk out into the living room and just shoot the crap and laugh and joke with somebody while you drink orange juice out of the jug in your pajamas for a few minutes before going back to bed. Most of the habits you have are actually your parents' habits they passed on to you. I also noticed that not everyone who moves out of their parents' house realizes this. My wife and I argue frequently, though not in a serious way, that the other loads the dishwasher wrong because our parents had different dishwasher habits. I choose who I let come over. This is big. I hated most of my brother's friends and most of the people I lived with. Mum's fiancé and his kids and grandkids irritated the crap out of me. Now it's just me and whoever I invite over. It's beautiful. I can't afford all those extra things I usually throw in my parents' grocery trolley. And how expensive the essentials like toilet paper and dish soap add up to be. And how it's a chore in itself remembering to write them on the list and actually purchase them. It's easy to think you're doing super well with money before you start paying for incidentals and household stuff. So true, I remember my first trip to the store about a month and a half after I went to college. I had a pretty tight budget of about $250 a month that my parents gave me to spend on random things, which, by the way, I know is extremely generous of my parents to give me, and I'm exceedingly grateful that they did. I went to the store thinking, okay, all I need is some toilet paper, that should be pretty cheap. I'll still have plenty of money to buy some booze and eat out with friends a few times. Maybe I'll have enough to get a new video game. Then I walked down the aisle and realized pretty quickly that I needed a lot more than just TP. I was nearly out of laundry detergent, shampoo, deodorant, trash bags, etc. By the time the clerk was done ringing it all up, the bill was north of $100, which was further punctuated with the knowledge that my car was basically on empty and that I needed to stop on the way home and get gas. I sat at home that night knowing that I had like $90 of spending money for the rest of the month. It was a harsh moment of reality when my friends wanted me to go out and I had to tell them I couldn't afford it. I learned pretty quickly that I needed to make a budget and not take all of those small household items for granted. That the dish fairy didn't move in with me. You'll soon realize that the dish fairy was inside you all along. The ghost sounds I was hearing all the time was my parents doing the deed. Spooky. God damn, I miss my dad. God damn, am I glad to be away from my mother. Oh, I can bring boys into the house. That everything costs money. Rent costs money, council taxes cost money, heat costs money, water costs money, electricity costs money. Groceries, guess what? Cost money. Petrol costs money, maintenance costs money, TV license costs money, just Living costs money. I was in no way spoiled or sheltered when I was growing up, but even I was shocked by the expenses of everything. I dread to think how much my parents must have been spending every month just to keep a family of 5 alive. Makes me appreciate them even more, and I feel awful about how I used to moan about not having stuff when I was growing up. A fairly high amount of the comments on the cost of living in this one. I would suspect that's the biggest factor when you move out, although some of us delayed the issues of bills by living in student accommodation and just clump it all together. That I actually don't mind a little bit of order in my house.
Oh, I hear ya. Nothing like coming home to no surprises.
It's also kind of weird. I live with my parents still, but I was completely alone for a few weeks last year, and for some reason it was really odd to come home and find that nothing had moved. I mean, of course, the first thing you notice is that those dishes aren't going to do themselves, but it wasn't just about the work I had to do, it was the little things, like putting some letter on a table and it staying there for days unless I moved it myself. Seeing those objects stuck in the same place every time you came home kind of makes you notice how much the house actually lives when everyone else is there. It's so gosh darn quiet. Gloriously quiet. I laid on my floor of my empty apartment living room like, oh my god, yes. How much they actually took care of. Those frickers own a house, cabin, a condo, and manage every single bill they have while working more than full-time jobs. The kicker? They still have free time. Like what the frick, parents, I can barely make breakfast and be out the door on time, yet y'all just made a 5-course breakfast and have finished half your emails in the same time. It made me appreciate how damn efficient they were with their time. I can eat whatever I want for every meal of every day.
So how many boxes of Pop-Tarts is that a week? When I was 15, my mom went to prison and my dad was a drunk. So I was in charge of the food stamps, $500 a month. The grocery store had a sale and Pop-Tarts were $1. Guess who had 300 boxes of Pop-Tarts? The freedom from someone else dictating your life, which was absolutely worth all of the other responsibilities that go with living on your own. It's not even close. That I can make a sandwich at 3 a.m. and no one can be mad at me. It was liberating. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. The amount of peace I got and the mental fatigue that got lifted off my shoulders. I felt like I couldn't do anything at home without being judged. Unfortunately, my mom has this habit of randomly stopping by unannounced in the middle of the day, especially on weekends when I'm just trying to sit in my bathrobe and drink beer and play video games for a few hours in the middle of the daylight. And then she's always so obviously condescending about it and it feels like crap. Like, sorry mom, I got a degree in a field where I can get weekends off, if I work 9 to 5 all week. I don't see why I should have to get up and be super productive every fricking Sunday as well. The other thing that bothers me a lot is that she doesn't really understand what my work is. Energy management and engineering analysis type stuff. So she kind of dismisses it as if I don't actually have to do any work, and my existence is some kind of stress-free fairy tale life. It tees me off. How much I didn't miss it. My roommate was calling home constantly and terribly homesick, but I never felt that. I somehow have a closer relationship with my family after moving out than I did while I lived with them, and their house never fully felt like a home to me. The saying, home is where the heart is true even if you're not talking about being in love. I wasn't close with my family, and I didn't feel like that house was much of a home. I lived in an apartment with my best friends from 2012 to 14, and I still miss that terribly at times. I don't really need to eat. Who would bother? What is dinner? Living on my own made me really wish eating was optional. The house needed a lot of day-to-day supplies, so the first few shopping trips were insanely expensive. Things like cooking oils, flour, sugar, saran wrap, tinfoil, garbage bags, mops, brooms, plungers, flashlights, etc. You don't really realize how many things you need on hand when you already had them for years with your parents.
When I first moved into my apartment, one of the worst things was rebuilding my pantry or spice cabinet. Cooking dinner was always a challenge because there were always little things I forgot that my parents' house just always had. Making chicken tacos and need some seasoning? I'll just grab that Cajun stuff my mum buys. Oh wait, all I have is salt and pepper packets from Wendy's. Guess that's not happening. I've been on my own for mostly a year now, and there's still things that I don't ever think of that my parents always had, like skewers and tongs and a whisk and a hand mixer. Never thought I would have to make do with so little simply because I forgot about stuff. One of the first days in my apartment, I dropped food on the floor and instinctively called the dog over to clean it up. Didn't have a dog anymore.
That's why I got one for my place. Also, it helps me to not feel lonely.
that I had made a huge mistake. However, I could sit as close to the TV as I wanted and stand there with the refrigerator door open and cool the whole neighborhood.
I'm all alone and can do whatever I want, whenever I want.
Living alone, everything in the fridge spoils so gosh darn fast. Cooking huge portions is awesome. It's relatively cheap and makes for really easy dinners throughout the week.
Yeah, I load up the crock pot, go to work, come home to dinner, and have portions to freeze.
I'm not sure where this falls between awesome independence and burning your apartment to the ground by accident. I guess that's unlikely, but I would be terrified to leave a cooking implement on at home without me there all day. When I lived at my mum's, I had to ask for permission to shower. When I moved out, I would ask my roommate if I could shower. It wasn't until a couple of months of living together that she told me I didn't have to ask and I could just shower. I had no idea it was a weird thing to ask permission for, that and a lot of other things. Toilet paper doesn't just magically appear in the cupboard. You actually have to remember to go and buy it. There was a reason my dad was so crazy about what the thermostat was set to. That crap gets expensive. That the real world is easy. I was 18 when I moved out. I'd already been paying for my car and car insurance, health insurance, and taking care of myself, clothes, food, dog, financially for years because my mum was incapable of taking care of herself, let alone her daughter. I've always been the one to cook and clean and budget money and take care of myself and others. My family would ask how it is to not live with my mum and living on my own, asking as if it was a huge shock or anything like that. Other than having less spending money, it was exactly the same as living with my alcoholic, hardly home mother. My childhood might have been heck, but I grew up fast and I was able to migrate to living on my own and adulthood seamlessly.
If she's not proud of you, I'm proud of you. You grew up strong. Keep on keeping on.
That being an adult is way less scary than it was made out to be. It isn't normal to spend a whole 12-hour day once a week going over finances. It isn't normal for it to take 2 months to resolve a phone call with a company. Cleaning the house shouldn't take a whole week. Driving isn't that bad. My mum made me terrified to be an adult, and now I'm handling it just freaking fine. I'm really teed off at how anxious she made me. My parents were chain smokers. My whole life I lived in a smoke-filled house. The first time I came back from college, I was hit with a wave of stale cigarette smoke. I realized 2 things. Cigarette smoke smells like butt, and I figured why I grew up with pretty non-stop allergies and asthma. Why anyone would willfully fill their house with that crap is beyond my understanding.
Same. I was the only person in my house that didn't smoke. Even my young sister was smoking by 13, and because of that, all of my clothes stank of smoke, and people would ask me if I'd been smoking. I'd never even tried one. I never realized how bad it was until I moved away for a few months. I lived with people who smoked, but they'd maybe had 1 or 2 while they were home, and if it was warm enough, they'd go outside. When I moved back, I felt like I was sick all the time and I would get horrible headaches. I suffered headaches before this, but the doctors said it was stress headaches, but obviously we knew what it is now. One day I was sat in the living room trying to eat and my nan, who I lived with, started to come in and light up. I asked her repeatedly to go into the kitchen and smoke instead, and she wouldn't, and I just went mental, flipped the table over, and stayed at my boyfriend's that night. Toilet paper that doesn't feel like sandpaper is too expensive. You buy cheap ketchup, the cheap bread, store-brand Advil, whatever, but you do not go with the cheap toilet paper.
Yeah, and you've only got one butthole for the rest of your life. Treat it with the respect it deserves.
Don't get me started on how coddled the modern butthole is.
Dust is real. Very real.
When I set down something, it's where I left it when I go to get it later.
I had a free ride all of my life until moving out.
I can pee with the door open. It's a way of life now.
That cleaning isn't such a chore as parents make it out to be. I clean 1 day a week on a Saturday for about 3 hours and that's it. Everything is done. I just make sure to clean up after myself as best as I can. Sometimes I'll admit I'll leave that thing out on my coffee table for a while, or leave dirty clothes near my laundry basket but not quite in it. But it's no biggie, small messes here and there. Still in the end, just a few hours on a Saturday to vacuum, Clorox, Windex and Lysol everything, and it's clean for another week. I also realized that most of the messes my parents would complain about were the ones that they made themselves that got out of control and then they would pin it on me to help clean it up. Now everything is clean, no one nags for it to be cleaner since it's already spotless, and it's wonderful.
I came here to post along the same lines. When I lived at home, somehow every kitchen mess was my mess to clean. They did fine with everything else, but the kitchen always had stacks of dishes, piles of mail, countertops full of crumbs, etc. I moved out, bought my own house. I deep clean my kitchen once every 1.5 to 2 weeks to keep it tidy the rest of the time. Their kitchen is exactly the same as when I left. Of course, a lot of that has to do with the fact that you are 1. Living in a space significantly smaller than your parents, and 2. Not cleaning up after as many people. Keeping clean a 5-bed, 4-bath house while raising 2 children and working full-time is exactly as much of a chore as your parents made it out to be. That not everything needs to be immediate. Growing up, if my parents told me how to do something, they meant now. Dishes needed to be done now, trash needs to be done now, lawn needs to be mowed now. When I moved out, most adults in my life assumed it would go to crap because I seemed lazy. But really, it just let me do what I needed to do at my own pace instead. Dishes can sit a day or 2, trash can wait a bit. Not everything is an emergency. I kind of had the opposite happen. When I was married and asked my husband to do something, never said, "Do it now," just that I needed his help. His default answer was, "Not right now," which translated to no. My significant other is so different. I mentioned in passing that there was a thing, old shelf component, sticking out of the pantry wall, and that this thing needs to go. He stopped what he was doing, got a flashlight and the drill, and took care of it on the spot. This blew my mind. I thanked him profusely, and continue to do so whenever he helps me out. He does the same, so nobody feels taken advantage of. It's such a nice change of pace. That I didn't have to account for all of my comings and goings, report where I was and when I'd be back, and when I came home, I didn't have that pit in my stomach that I had at my parents' house, knowing I would no longer be interrogated and criticized for whatever I was doing. I knew my parents were controlling and manipulative, but I didn't realize how bad it was until I left. Best decision ever. The skyrocket of my self-esteem. There was no one to call me fat or tell me my clothes and hair were ugly or stupid. The constant criticism and drunken abuse vanished. It was no longer my responsibility to get my loser brother doing things or meeting people. He's 3 years older than me. I still see my mum and dad most weekends, but as soon as my mum starts drinking, I get to peace out and go home. What is something your teacher did that really wrecked your school experience? In GCSE English, he taught us the wrong novel for almost the entire term. We'd read this book over and over, answered essays and remembered and studied every significant narrative meaning. Apparently, none of the faculty heads had checked up on him until about 6 weeks before our exams, when they realized all our work was on a book not even on the syllabus, and all our time was effectively wasted. So to rectify, we lost all of our PE sessions, had to stay late after school 3 days a week, and spend 3 out of 5 lunch breaks cram learning the actual book with another teacher. Safe to say, our class wasn't happy at all, and most parents complained about it as it could affect our ability to pass the exams. Oh my god, this sounds just like my GCSE history class. Teacher went off sick for almost all the school year and only left one note for the supplies, which was to read and copy out a single page in the textbook. So for 5 months we had multiple different substitute teachers writing out the same page. Eventually we got a college lecturer to help us out, but we had to miss our PE lessons and catch up on history. And we had to come into school during the summer holidays to be taught by private tutors. We pretty much all failed. Head teacher of my high school tried to expel me for having an epileptic seizure in front of him, said I was a danger and a distraction to other pupils and was disrupting his school. I ended up being kept out of school for 2 months while my parents fought my case. In that time, almost all of the rest of the teaching staff, who were furious with this decision, kept me supplied with work and even one-to-one tutoring when needed. This was in a rural area where the next nearest school was 40 miles away, so we had no other school choice. Happy ending, I finished the year with the top grades in my exams. The head teacher had to present me with a prize in front of the whole school. While he was shaking my hand and saying a very forced, "Well done," I replied, "No thanks to you." The applause etc. covered it, so no one else heard me, but he for sure did. My brother was finding his balance of medication while in high school and would have a seizure every so often in class. That by itself is embarrassing. Why the heck would somebody make it that much more difficult for you? I'm sorry, friend. People suck. I can't believe that someone who runs a school and is presumably regularly attending programs to update his skill set and hears about current events in education could react so crappily to the existence of a student with a somewhat common condition. Appalling. 40-degree weather, Celsius, in outback Australia, and she wouldn't turn the aircon on in class even though it worked. Her reason was that when she was young she didn't have aircon and she survived. Yeah, nah, all the students hated her. Mine was the reverse, middle of winter up in the Blue Mountains, B-word wouldn't even turn the heater on in the mornings because she grew up without heated classrooms, and it's like, yeah, but you guys were also allowed to wear giant frickin' coats, weren't you? Where didn't they have heated classrooms? There's a schoolhouse by me built in the 1850s, and they have a wood stove in the front. At university, my professor didn't tell us the time of our examination, despite numerous emails from 20-odd students as well as the head professor of the course. This exam could have been any time from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and I lived 90 minutes from campus and I relied on crap public transport to get into uni. It got to 9 p.m. the day before the exam, no one knew when the exam would be, and if we missed it, we would fail the whole module. So I took the train to the city where my uni is, booked a cheap, crappy hotel room for the night just to make sure I was there on time. We all took the exam at 12 p.m. after getting an email an hour before the exam was being held, so I wouldn't have made it in time if I'd stayed at home. Worst part was that no one cared, not the professor, the course lead, or the head of our school. They just left 30 students in the lurch, allowing them to potentially fail the exam and therefore the module. In my second semester of my first year of law school, everyone in my class, 80+ people, had to take a research class. This class was taught by 4 different law librarians but followed the same syllabus. It was also worth 1 credit. These librarians ran the class as if it was 3 credits. We had to read, conduct legal research, write 2 memos throughout the semester when we had 5 other classes, all within the 2 to 4 credit range. Plus 1 specific class that was notoriously difficult. Anyway, halfway through the semester, my class gets teed off at the workload to credit ratio, and someone starts a petition to reduce the number of assignments and/or change the grading for the class from a letter grade to a pass or fail. Almost the entire class signs, there are a few holdouts. The student who started the petition delivers it to the librarians. The librarians remove 1 or 2 assignments, but otherwise disregard the petition. Those who signed all awkwardly suffered through the rest of the semester. It's so annoying to only get 1 credit for a big class. Once a teacher said about a 1-credit class, "Actually, this class should have more credits, but there weren't any left when dividing the credits." It also happens that classes are 0 credits and you're still scheduled to pass them. It's weird how the credits are divided. A study year is worth 60 credits, then the credits are just divided somehow over all the classes no matter how many classes and how much workload there is. The weirdest thing that happened was when my major shared a common subject with a different major. We had different but overlapping majors. This was one of the overlapping subjects. Because the other majors had less subjects total, this subject was worth more credits to them than my major, because we all had to get 60 credits in a year, no matter the amount of subjects and the workload. Forced us to make a donation to charity. When I didn't bring anything in, I got a demerit. Had to argue that not everyone has the ability to give something away. She then told me off for backchatting in front of the class. Everyone was like, "What the frick?" My God, you just gave me a flashback. I remember I had a teacher. She never actually taught me. I don't even know what her position at the school was. She yelled at me for not bringing in canned foods for the food drive. She said I was lazy and not thinking of those less fortunate. She even took my agenda out of my desk and wrote it in my daily calendar to bring food. Like, sorry, I can't bring in food I don't have, B-word. Joke's on her though, I never used that agenda anyways, and I still didn't bring stuff in. My work sent me on a 3-day advanced Adobe Illustrator course last April in London. Just before the exam, the tutor said, "Oh, by the way, there may be a few questions on this exam that we haven't talked about. Just do your best." What the actual frick, my work's just paid £1,000 for this. His response was that he can't be expected to teach everything. There was about 6 students in the class and we were all pretty teed off. Can't be expected to teach everything. Yes, he is. It's his job. Make everyone come to college from 10 a.m. till 11:30 to hold presentations. Be 45 minutes late. Not tell students they aren't allowed to see each other's student presentations and thus make them be at school at 10 a.m. without reason. Somehow take up 3 times the amount of allocated time per presentation group. Finish at 18 instead of 11:30. Let most of the students fail or just barely pass. In that particular order. She didn't believe in field trips because she said that kids would have too much fun, and learning isn't supposed to be fun. However, the entire grade would take the trip, so she was required to take us. She would make us all sit in a common area of the zoo, museum, etc., and she would hold classroom lessons. It was so upsetting to hear about all the cool things the other kids got to see while we had class. The fact that I still remember things I learned on fun field trips compared to the countless times I was in classrooms says a lot. He would act like he was enlightened and say stuff like, "Video games rot your brain. All your free time should be spent on education as that is all that matters." But then during the lessons, he would go completely off topic and start talking about random crap. Apparently, he's making a board game that could compete with chess because he's just that brilliant.
screamed at the class because he assumed that an intermittent beeping sound that occurred throughout the lecture was somebody receiving texts. It was the projector that he was using, alerting him to the fact that it was overheating. Dumb idiot.
That's almost as good as the time a substitute tried to confiscate a student's phone when it beeped. It was a diabetes monitor attached to the student's body. My friend with an insulin pump was sent to the office by the security guard because she refused to take off her pager. Cell phones weren't really a thing until my senior year or so. He called her a liar when she said it was a medical device. Principal was pretty unhappy with that one.
When you combine crappy teachers and people who don't understand how technology works, you get a real Venn diagram for unfair punishment, I suppose. I had a college professor who was teaching a history course to a bunch of education majors in their junior year. She would ask us questions all the time about things she hadn't yet lectured on, and then pull the, "Really? No one knows the answer to this? Well, I guess we'll just wait for someone to answer." We were all education majors. We knew that trick. We waited her out every single time. She always broke first. For those wondering, what's the trick? This was a poorly executed attempt at using the Socratic method. It's better to have students arrive at an answer themselves than it is to tell them. However, you have to first create an environment of trust and respect so that students are comfortable enough to risk a wrong answer. And you have to be willing to provide a bit of scaffolding should no one know. The professor did neither of those things. Our French teacher held a 5-minute detention for the entire class because we waited outside the classroom for her to let us in. You know, like polite kids do. She claimed we were wasting her time and sent a detention note home to all the parents. Better still, on result days, she said, "Wow, I didn't expect you to get an A." During English-controlled assessments, she would play whale noises in the background to help us focus. "Class, to help you focus, I've put on calming whale noises." Whale mating video starts playing. Isn't that better? We were about 10 or 11 years old. It was the last period of the day and the music teacher was subbing our science class. He was sitting on the computer and we were all getting on with work. Toward the end of the day, our homeroom teacher comes into the classroom and exclaims, "It's the end of the day, why are you not all packed up?" To which the music teacher replied, "I told them and they refused to." Excuse you? He hadn't said a thing to us, so we all protested. Even so, our homeroom teacher told us off for being disobedient as the music teacher slithered out of the room and we had to stay 10 minutes late as punishment. Lying snake. Why was not packing up such a problem? Honestly, I have no clue. The homeroom teacher had a tendency to get funny about random things, but generally she was really nice and one of our favorite teachers. She's a family friend, and now that I'm older, I know she's an alcoholic and had problems with her marriage then. I would guess that it has something to do with that. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. 2 words. Collective punishment. If you're an educator and you want your whole class to instantly hate you, this is how you do it. Another thing I remembered, we had to go to a nearby sports field for PE, which was about a 10-minute walk from the school. We only had a 5-minute gap between lessons. No matter how many times we explained we had PE, some teachers would always kick up a fuss if we were late to the lesson after PE. It also led to students missing the school bus if you had PE as the last session of the day. I'm pretty sure some parents complained because they started ending PE lessons 5 to 10 minutes earlier. I think collective punishment is supposed to make the whole class hate the one student who was acting out. In reality, obviously, it's the teacher who comes off as the bad guy. How ironic. The class was doing a project on criminal justice and held a mock trial. My friend got assigned to play the role of a victim of inappropriate behavior from an adult. In real life, she had actually been the victim of this kind of behavior. She felt it would be too emotionally draining and tried to get out of the part. The teacher wanted an explanation, but my friend kept saying it was very personal. This went back and forth a few times over the next 2 days and it was just not clicking in the teacher's head. Finally, he lost his patience and yelled out, "You're holding up this whole project for everyone. Why the heck is this so difficult for you?" With the whole class paying attention, she admitted the reason why. She had had this kind of thing happen to her before in real life, and she went to go cry. They changed the topic of the project after that, but the class never really looked at the teacher the same way again. Not just the class, but the whole school. She got a bunch of teachers fired because of petty office politics, and those teachers were older and more beloved than her. gave a C to an 85% test because she gives grades relative to the average performance of a student. My siblings once got an F for making a single mistake on the entire test. The reasoning was that it was a bonus grade anyway. Sounds like my friend that got downgraded from an A to a B because he used pain instead of sores. No other mistake than that. Our teacher in that class was second to the most hated, only because he wasn't as much of a C word as the first.
This happened in my class as well. In English class, English as a second language, a classmate used perhaps, but he was downgraded since that wasn't a word we'd learned yet. He should have used maybe. Demoting his grade for learning ahead. Always an excellent plan to promote learning. You know, after reading that, I'll thank my lucky stars for always having dedicated and involved teachers who rewarded students for going the extra mile, rather than bringing our grades down for it. You would assume that was a thing you wouldn't have to be thankful for. Teacher spent weeks teaching us the shin lever method of learning about natural science instead of teaching from the book. On test day, he gave us the test that came with the teacher's version of the book, so we'd never even covered the info on the test. We all scored poorly, but learned to ignore him in class and study the book on our own. Google isn't telling me about this shin lever method. What is it?
His name was Mr. Shinlever, and his method was to teach us the things he remembered from college about natural science, none of which was covered in our 9th grade textbooks. Oh my god, how did he get the job?
My German teacher would make you retake spelling tests until you got 100%. Once you did, you could sit and do whatever you like until the whole class got 100%. This caused a lot of pressure on everyone, as he used to belittle the students who didn't pass first or the second time. If you were the only one left, he would stand over you and watch you struggle. One test day, I decided to bunk off and got caught. I burst into tears and explained how horrible this teacher was and that I'm never going back into his class. I was moved into a higher set German class with an amazing teacher and my German improved. When I was a sophomore in high school, there was a shooting at an elementary school in my town. I'm sure you could figure out which one. And we went into lockdown. My math teacher proceeded to hand out the test we were supposed to take that day and told us to have it done by the end of the lockdown drill. No matter how many students complained or tried to tell her what was going on at the school, she remained adamant that it was just a drill even when they started reporting death counts. None of us looked at her the same afterwards. Holy crap, this is the worst one in this thread.
This was second year, or 12th grade, in school. My teacher, unable to manage 20 of these rowdy kids, is pretty enraged by the end of the class. She has a thing about counting every piece of equipment after class, and she begins counting the Newton meters. Now, if you don't know what these are literally a metal spring with plastic around it that measures how much a thing weighs. This teacher counted 19 when there was definitely 20. She holds us back for lunch. She brings the faculty head in, and we get a bollocking from her. Cannot steal from the school, unjust, yada yada yada. If we were rowdy before, we're raging now, and she requests the least well-behaved kids open their bags. Of course, these kids are protesting, but the teacher offers detention if they don't comply. So after rummaging through a bunch of pubescent kids' bags and finding nothing, she finally goes back to her desk to find the Newton meter sitting behind her world's best teacher mug. Look on her face, priceless.
I would pay to watch the look on her face. The fact that she found it behind her world's best teacher mug is even more hilarious.
That mug was promptly retired from duty. Pretty standard teacher stuff, keeping the whole class in at lunch for something one person had done. It was the fact that the school had a very clear behavior and punishment policy that teachers and pupils alike understood that teed us off, because she blatantly broke it just to prove a point. To explain, someone's phone went off in class. At that school, at that time, that meant having your phone taken off you and getting it back at the end of the day. Fair do. The someone whose phone it was, however, refused to admit that it was them. This teed the class off to begin with. Then the teacher said that we'd all have to come back at lunch. The lesson was after break, so we had another lesson before lunch if I recall correctly, and if we didn't, we'd have an hour's detention after school. Being a goody-goody, I didn't want an hour's detention on my record, so I turned up, but did at least start eating my packaged lunch and dared her to tell me not to. I'd like to know if she ever chased up the people who didn't turn up.
This maths teacher had a reputation for being a real brute and gave a lot of spontaneous tests. He played up one specific revision test, which was right before midterm or final I think, as being a really big deal where the result would reflect whether you have any potential in the subject and the usual dramatic spiel. After we did them, he went on holiday and took the tests with him to correct. Mother fricker forgot to bring them back and nobody ever got their result. Another bonus, this same teacher had a double period before a double period of gym, and sometimes 10 minutes before the bell goes, he'd just say, "We haven't covered enough, so instead of gym, you'll just have to do double maths now." She ended up leaving for her vacation earlier than she'd thought, so our final projects needed to be done 3 days early. Not a big deal if she hadn't told us on 2 days' notice. I don't get how teachers get away with this crap. We had our teachers change the exam topic. I took graphic design as a GCSE, my practice exam was an A grade. They then changed the exam to resistant materials with about 2 weeks' notice. I ended up with a C grade in my GCSE. Only one person got to do the exam we studied for because their mother went ballistic. Our religious studies exam teacher taught us the syllabus for the wrong exam board, so we had to go to school for 3 days during the Easter holidays to learn an entire new syllabus. Numerous times they failed students at an exam, then publicly admitted that passing 40 to 50% of students that took the exam would be too much, and that's considered normal behavior. I absolutely hate this. There was this teacher at my old university who just so happens to be the father of one of my closest friends. I was very confused in the beginning when everyone hated him because to me he seemed like a nice guy. I find out later he takes pride in failing his students and will actively fail anyone he feels isn't interested or putting in enough effort. One of my favorite professors said it best: "If half your students fail your class, you've failed as an educator for half those students." Got caught on my phone in class, took it away and put it in her drawer and managed to lose it. Everyone gets searched apart from her, and she was a supply teacher. I think it was some girl in my class. "I got my 3DS taken away, and when I got it back, the admin at the front desk said they played it and ruined whatever I was doing. I was rightly teed off, but I didn't want to get into any more trouble." Mine turned off the AC to punish the people passing notes. She yelled at my friend for missing so much class. He was obviously at chemo. He looked like it, the whole school knew, including faculty, and he said, "I have cancer," and walked out. He sadly passed away 3 months later of leukemia. He wouldn't let the class go until everyone rolled some dice, and if you got 6 on any of the 2 dice, you could leave. I got so many tardy slips and calls home because of him. What was the reasoning? To create more timelines? A gambling addiction, probably. Math teacher. "Class, it's test time." "But professor, you said yesterday that today we wouldn't have to take a test." "Correct. You will not take a test. You'll take 2 one-hour tests in a single hour." What's the most disastrous email fail that occurred in your workplace? Had a management peer send out a long screed about the state of the men's crapper on our floor. Very descriptive. Went out to all the men on the floor, and a whole bunch of customers. HR sent out a terrible email about restroom cleanliness to my entire office. They sent an email complaining about crap stains on a toilet seat and a used tampon that was placed on the trash receptacle instead of inside of it. They even decided to attach pictures of both problems along with the email. I'm not sure of any repercussions of this email, but there were a lot of unhappy people in our office after opening the attached images. A design artist at a print shop I worked at 10 years ago, I'll call her Zed, had always been one of those flaky but only just good enough to keep types. She'd create files that looked fine to customers and on screen, but required craploads of pre-press de-frickery to make printable. Zero real technical skill when it should have been half her job. One day, a little after lunch, a company-wide email from Zed to her husband came through where she described waiting with glee for the opportunity to purposely frick up a big repeat yearly job right before she planned to quit 8 months later. A lot of print jobs are on a yearly cycle with local businesses. This happened in February and referred to a 40K job that came around every October. As IT relief, I got called in to check what happened, and sure enough, Zed's other emails, sent on her workstation's email address to her husband, described other stupid things she was planning, and referred to one of her husband's friends who worked for a rival print shop, so it was clear it was a bit of sabotage and probably upcoming poaching. Zed was fired less than an hour after the email was sent. I didn't mention to my bosses that the email to all the staff was sent when I knew Zed was out of the office and had originally been sent before she went to lunch, and originally only to her husband. Our other designer, a quiet, mousy type who could actually do the work, had seen the earlier set of emails at other times she needed to use Zed's workstation and had copied and pasted this completely revealing email into a new email to the whole company from Zed's workstation. I just told her later in passing that I got her email about Zed and gave her a thumbs up. I'm sure the schadenfreude was enough for them, but quiet mouse designer deserves more than a thumbs up. Oh, she got a new co-worker not long after who was also a good worker, no more constant picking up after Zed. Two of the partners at my old firm were having a not very discreet affair. Both were married to other people. Partner A was in charge of the summer associate program and sent an email around the firm with information on the summers, names, schools, etc., who would be mentors for who, dates of events, etc. Partner B replied all to a 500-plus person law firm, attorneys, paralegals, secretaries, everybody. I'm going to pork you so hard later. It was hilarious for several reasons, including his ultra-seductive use of the word pork. I hope someone replied, sounds delicious, count me in. From coworker 1 to everyone. Subject, porking. Everybody get in here. The original story was good, but these replies are Reddit gold. Fantastic work, everybody. Also, note to self, do not have email affairs in the office. A coworker of mine was trying to motivate their sales office and was saying to get your hands dirty, and if we had any difficulties closing a sale, the girls should shake their little butts and close the sale. Reached our CEO. She wasn't there long. I was a temp in a very large law firm for a bit. One day, a new lawyer was hired, and HR sent out the standard email to everyone introducing the new guy and congratulating him on his new position. New guy then replies to all and asks the HR person if his benefits package pays for a hair transplant procedure. I used to work at a law firm, and one day an email went out to everyone, about 40 people, that was about a specific case and had very little relevance to my job position, so I ignored it. A few minutes later, I got another email from a different attorney with a snarky response. Well, an argument started between these two attorneys, still replying all to the office, and after about 6 or so emails, a third attorney wrote, "Yeah, well, my dad can beat up your dad. By the way, you've been sending this to the whole office." At my firm, about 50 employees, there's a partner that used to reply all to conflict checks and other emails that are sent to all employees with, "X City says hello." Right up until the day when another partner replied with, "No one gives a frick about where you are today, Bob. Stop being an attention whore." Kind of the same thing but different. I used to work for a company that was a vendor for Abercrombie & Fitch. I would send emails to different people that work at Abercrombie every day. One day, I sent a request to someone at the company and got an out-of-office reply that basically said, "I am no longer with A&F. F this crap. F this place. Everyone here sucks." I laughed my butt off for a few minutes, then called a buddy that works there. Pretty soon the whole company was sending emails to this account just to read the reply. It took about an hour for their IT department to get wind and take it offline. One dude mailed one of those Great American Gas Out things to all 6,000 plus employees. The CEO did a reply all saying something like, "Exxon is one of our biggest clients, and using company resources for your own political agenda is against company policy. Reply all to a big group is one thing, but I don't understand how companies of more than 50 people still allow anyone to use the all employees group address. There are 50K employees in my company. There are several email distro addresses that include them all. It is heck when someone mucks up that one." People would type their password into group chats thinking they were logging into a particular system. I heard about someone where I worked that meant to send out an email to the whole department, a couple of dozen people, to let them know that for their birthday they brought in donuts for everyone. People do this all the time. This guy, however, selected the email list for the whole company instead of the department. They were getting replies from employees in other countries saying things like, "Well, I don't know you and I can't travel there just for donuts, but happy birthday." About 10 years ago, I worked in a small office and a coworker was telling a boring story to the whole office. My boss went to email me to complain. I was his sounding board, but accidentally replied all to another company-wide email. His message sent to the entire company, "I wish Donna would have emailed me this story so I could delete it." She saw the email a few minutes later, threw keyboard up in the air, grabbed her purse and ran out of the office. My boss had to profusely apologize the next day. "Out of all the stories I've read so far, this one makes me laugh out loud. I can relate. A senior manager has done this with me when we're on conference calls, but he sends texts.
I was chatting with a guy who told me about the time he had to conference call with the US while he was traveling to Singapore, and the call was taking place at about 4 a.m. his time. He got up, joined the call, muted himself, and then went about showering, shaving, etc., getting his crap ready for the day. Then when he came back, he listened for about 30 seconds, then unmuted himself to ask a question, so it seemed like he was engaged. His colleague, who was traveling with him, staying 2 rooms down, texted him to ask, "Are you seriously paying attention to this crap?" We use instant messaging, and there have been a few times where someone messages the entire chat group complaining about someone else's work or just them being generally bad at their job. Usually that's quickly followed by, "Oops," as if that's going to make it better. You have to own that crap. If someone calls you on it, just answer back with, "Yeah, I think Becky in accounting is crappy at her job. So what?" Or message just one person, but that one person happens to be screen sharing with the entire group. I worked in a very large government complex, and someone once replied all to an email that was sent to the 500-plus employees with the caption, "This guy looks like Reggie, lol." The picture was of a large, hairy man in a Speedo. I have no idea who Reggie is, but if the caption was accurate, then he should consider buying some hair trimmers. Oh, poor Reggie. That story is very mean if it's about a male coworker, and it's downright awful if it's one of the women with the same name that I know exist, but also kind of an impressive level of cruelty if that is the case. I was working in an office during the Iraq War and get an email from some random private, "Y'all motherfrickers need to shut the heck up." Puzzled by such a blatant attack, I checked who this guy was and who he sent it to. I want to say that he sent it to everyone in command in Iraq, Afghanistan, and a few other places. Some say that private is still doing push-ups to this day. That private is the sole reason we began pulling out of Afghanistan. We had this guy from the main office, Pete, who comes up from time to time. He's an arrogant butthole. I'd decided that I couldn't stand that smug prick within literally 30 seconds of meeting him. Anyway, we had quite a bit of turnover in our department since Pete's last visit, so our boss wanted to schedule a lunch so he could meet everyone. So, his admin sent out a mass email to see who might be interested in lunch on Thursday. I replied back that I wouldn't be coming in because I had a conflict, and then I added, "Plus, Pete's kind of a frickwad." I hadn't realized that I'd hit reply all until I heard the scattered laughter from all over our floor. Our boss came over, invited me into the conference room and said, "I'd appreciate it if in the future you'd let everyone decide on their own terms whether or not Pete is a frickwad." Thankfully, Pete wasn't on the email. Working in the claims department for a huge insurance company, one time a claim handler sent out very personal customer information to the entire company. Every single employee, including the CEO, security staff, building staff, even cleaning staff. So that's bad enough. But then we have this other guy decide to reply all to that email, asking the other guy why he sent him this message, blissfully unaware that the first guy sent it to everyone in the company. So now the first guy responds, still unaware of what happened, telling the second guy he has no idea how that email went to him. So this email thread goes back and forth, reply all, these two geniuses investigating what the frick happened for like 10 replies. They finally decided it was a computer glitch. I don't know how they still have jobs. I'd have fired them for just not knowing how reply all worked. As someone that works in a place that complies to IPAA standards, holy crap, I'm surprised no one in management didn't freak the frick out. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. A guy from my training class got fired for poor performance. He knew for months it was coming. On his last day before the obligatory "this isn't working out" meeting, he sent an email to every single person who reports to our work site. I work for a very large company, so hundreds of people estimating conservatively, that said nothing more than, "Remember, no one ever expects the Spanish Inquisition." I guess everyone thought it was prudent to hit reply all to send back their confused responses. For hours. My poor inbox was getting flooded by their stupid replies. That dude knew exactly what he was doing. Random user accidentally sends an email to an entire division of a large government agency saying she'll be late. Cue an hour of people reply alling, "remove me from this list," and then another hour of reply alling, "don't reply all."
The "don't reply all" loop is hilarious. I've witnessed it several times. I'll never understand the stupidity of several different people saying "stop replying to all" in a reply all email over and over again.
Someone got a hold of the addresses that emailed the whole of our university, woke up to 30,000 emails, half of them saying "please remove me from this list" and "guys, they can't remove you, stop replying" and "for frick's sake, you're making it worse." We also got subscribed to a ton of alternative special interest websites, had an Apple account made, which still occasionally makes transactions in Russia. It crashed my phone, the emails were so constant. Okay, this one is technically not reply all, but close enough. The Dutch Railway has a timetable app with push notifications, if your train is delayed or something. One morning last year, basically all people in the Netherlands with this app, that's millions, receive a push message. This is a test message. Dear colleagues, I checked with software and all messages have been sent and received, followed by, just so Hio believes it too. Hio is a man's name. This one dude accidentally sent millions of people a message just to prove his colleague wrong. The GM of my office was having issues with the sales team. He's been known to go overboard. This time he hit a reply all and called one of the sales guys a dirty fricking N-word. Needless to say, once HR got hold of the email, his 27-year career was over. This is off topic, but your reply reminded me of it. When I was working in insurance, we had a new trainee at our office in the claims department who had his first claim and was putting the info into the claims software. Part of this process included typing a condensed version of your conversation with the customer. This particular customer requested that he wanted to pay out of pocket for a bigger rental vehicle, and the new employee typed into the system, "Customer says rental vehicle size on policy is too small and instead wants an N-word car." Obviously, he meant to type "bigger car." Best part about it was the system would not allow edits of the file after 24 hours. He caught his mistake the next day, literally 30 minutes past the edit cutoff time. Co-worker's baby sadly did not make it to childbirth. They announced the funeral. Guy in sales replies all with his "congratulations to the deserving couple." Holy frick, that's the most cringeworthy thing in this entire group. When I was in college, I worked at the local ISP. One day out of the blue, the lead system admin calls me. "Hey, do you know how to break into Cobalt RAQ? I need you to delete an email." Small hosting server. I could probably figure something out. Worst case, I can reboot it and reset the password." "Ah, crap. Frick. Never mind, that'll take too long." Click. A bit confused, I just shrugged and went on with my day. Later, I found out the reason for the strange phone call. The customer had been emailing back and forth with the sysadmin and the company owner regarding some technical issue that led to a billing dispute. The sysadmin, having a very short temper, hit reply all without thinking and wrote something along the lines of, "Just because that customer likes to take it up the butt doesn't mean we need to bend over and let him do whatever he wants." He called me to break into the server so he could delete the email before the customer had a chance to read it. Unfortunately, the customer got the email immediately and received a lot of free hosting services. This makes me realize that if a place I get a service from ever slanders me, I could reap the benefit. Time to start being a crappy customer. Actually, no, I don't have the spine to do that. I used to work for one of the largest newspapers in the world. One day, an email came through that was literally sent to the entire company worldwide. It was the contract a new hire who was a significant person at a rival paper was about to sign with a salary that was astronomical. The body text essentially said, "Give him whatever he wants." The woman who accidentally sent the email was kicked out of the building that day. When I read stories like this, I have to wonder, was it an accident or someone so teed off at the deal that they just said, "Screw it"? Guy just sent a, "Hey, listen babe, I just need to finish one last report and then I'll pick you up and frick your brain out in the car, okay? Sounds awesome, right? Yeah, until we noticed the address he meant to send it to was a subscription service for fake relationships and dirty talk. He was sending a message to a service he pays. He was role-playing. That's more sad than embarrassing. Put every name in the BCC if you're sending an email to a huge group so no one can hit reply all on accident. If they do, since they can't see the names in the BCC, the reply won't go to anyone but the original sender. Not a reply all, but my friend was using our inter-office instant messenger, meant to send the following message to me. "Well, if she stopped trying to frick all of her clients, maybe she'd hit her sales target for once." Yeah, he sent it to her instead. He got fired.
Someone at work sent an email asking for donations to his church. He sent it to over 2,000 employees. Then the chaos started. At first, I could see my inbox rise in numbers 5, 10, 25, etc. Suddenly, hundreds of emails poured in with some messages saying, "I don't want to donate and you should not send this email to everyone." No crap! I couldn't decide who was the biggest idiot. The guy who sent the email or the buttholes who replied all. The best email was from the IT director telling us not to reply all because the server was going to crash. And then it crashed. I heard that the guy got fired for soliciting donations, not emailing everyone, and IT got a slap on the hand for allowing everyone to have the access to the all-employees email group. Not my office division, but our oil field construction division sends in bids to secure future jobs. Lowest bidder wins. Winning a bid is sometimes scary because you wonder if you left out any estimation tables. Anyway, our estimator sends in the bid to the proper email, which goes to a secretary. Other competitors use the same email address to send in their bids as well. Imagine our horror when the secretary sends a reply all with a "Thank you for submitting your bid for Project X," and all the other bids are attached to this email. So every competitor sees where each other are increasing estimations and decreasing their costs. It's really both a "today I fricked up" moment and a cringe post. I work at a public institution. We send out our term schedules to departments so chairs, deans, and administrative assistants can review and make necessary changes. We had a chair reply back once the following: "I've made some changes to the schedule. Can you rerun the report and send it to me from my moron of a former secretary?" This is with the dean, chairs of the other departments in that academic college, and administrative assistants of that academic college all copied in, including the word moron. Apparently, she was on her way to being terminated for some reason. She was gone pretty soon afterwards. We never heard back from anybody else in that department either, so I'm not sure what happened. The chair that sent the email remained at the university until he ended up dying from something unexpectedly a few years ago. The head manager of my research and development lab got a spam email about a Windows virus involving a legit Java exe file that had a teddy bear icon. He looks on his computer and lo and behold, it's on his machine. He proceeds to lose his crap and forwarded it to everyone in the company, telling them to delete the file. He did not run this by IT first. IT was not amused. A sign showing a teddy bear with a dagger through its head labeled "The Teddy Bear Slayer" was found on his office door the next morning. Our company uses an IM service that's divided into rooms for each department as well as individual chats. We had a temp one year who flew through her work but did it poorly. She completed something like 24 tasks when the average temp did 5 or 6, but I'd have to stay late or waste my time fixing them. It was too far into our busy season to do anything else, so one night I messaged my coworker, "Ugh, she did like 25 things again. Now I've got to fix them," and she goes, "Ugh, frick." And then a third person goes, "That sucks," and I realized I'd sent the message to our entire department, including the aforementioned temp. First time I ever made a coworker cry. It was so bad. I made up some excuse that we both knew was bullcrap, and I still cringe thinking about it. True story. Worked at Maxis, division of EA, in the late 90s. We had a few temporary employee game testers, including this one girl, around 20 or so. I guess some friend of hers emailed her at work, one of those stupid teenage spams that went something like, "Forward this email to 5 friends and your crush will ask you out. Forward it to 10 friends and your crush will kiss you." So somehow she forwarded it to EA, as in everyone. Every employee at EA, maybe 2,500 people at the time, I suppose. I think our email system allowed a recall function to pull it out of the inboxes of anybody who hadn't read it yet, and I think she tried that, but it was too late. It outraged enough people around the company, including Redwood City HQ, Canada, Florida, and Texas, that I saw her in her boss's office within the hour in tears. We never saw her again. Just last week, an email was mistakenly sent to over 100,000 people in at least a dozen different countries. After about 45 minutes, there were a couple of reply all responses. A decent amount of people replied all saying not to reply all, but didn't realize that the email server was backed up trying to send a few million emails. Some emails took over 10 hours from the time sent for me to receive them. This caused more people to say not to reply all as they hadn't seen anyone else's response saying so yet. Over the next 12 hours, I and every one of the 100,000 people received over 180 emails, all having to do with wondering what the original email was or telling us not to reply all. Over 18 million emails in total. A back-of-the-napkin estimation said it cost the company tens of thousands of dollars. For those asking for the calculation, If all 100,000 people lost 5 minutes of working time to this mess, that is 500,000 minutes, which is 8,333.3 repeating man-hours. I'll assume an average payment of $20 per hour per employee, which is a very low estimate. That's over $166,000 lost. Keep in mind that while not everyone spent 5 minutes reading through and deleting the emails, there were also people like me who lost upwards of 5 to 6 hours due to waiting on emails to get me started on a new set of work. The large consulting firm I worked at was rolling out new laptops company-wide and sent out a mass email outlining the 2 laptops that employees could choose from once they received their notification that it was time to choose. Essentially a standard laptop or a smaller laptop that could be converted into a tablet, a Lenovo Yoga. Several people replied all, but my absolute favorite reply was simply, "I want the one that can be like iPad." All lowercase, 0 punctuation. Top-notch professionalism. An employee emailed if anyone could take his 2 to 10 shift, but he forgot the F in shift, so someone replies to everyone, including our managers and GM, "Wow, that's a long shit." You get the idea. What has made you bail out of sleeping with someone? Went for a Facebook booty call a while back. Her 7 and 9-year-old daughters kept walking in and she told me to just ignore them. She also insisted on blaring George Strait while we went at it. Between her kids walking in and "All my exes live in Texas" blaring from her speakers, I just couldn't do it. I noped the frick out. Her come-on line was, "I know a guy who'll give us all the crystal we can smoke if we frick right in front of him." In high school, freshman year, I dated this girl for about a month. When we did the deed for the first time, she rips off the rubber, says she wants me to drop my seed inside her because she wants to start a family, pulled my pants up and left immediately. Years later, she has a kid with her new boyfriend. Train successfully dodged. A guy used the line, "I want to fill you with my seed" in a pub once. Did not let go of my friend for hours. Asked her if she was clean and she said, "Yeah, it's a long story, but a lot of stuff happened, and it turns out now I can't get transmissibles." I thought to myself, you know what, I don't want to do the deed that bad, and I left. This reminds me of a prior roommate who said she doesn't use rubbers because she can't get pregnant and doesn't sleep with people who have transmissible diseases down there, but she wasn't getting tested or having people get tested. She never went into any detail on why or how she knew she couldn't get pregnant, just because of some stuff that had happened, hence you reminding me of her. A couple of months after I moved out, I found out she's pregnant. Yeah, so that plan worked out all kinds of well, huh? Glad I got out of there before a kid was around. Dealing with her was a headache enough, not because of her personal crap or not using rubbers, she was just crazy. Guy I worked with walked around telling everyone that he F's his girlfriend without a rubber because guys can't get warts down there. I told him that not only has he basically told everyone that his girlfriend has warts down there, but he probably has them now too because men can indeed get them. It's just not as likely to turn into cancer for them, and now he'll have to use a rubber with everyone for the rest of his life or risk infecting them with something that could give them cancer. Of course, I'm the bad guy for telling him that. We were in his car fooling around after leaving the bar together. I asked why we couldn't go back to his house. He said his wife was home. Nope. He didn't want to wake her up. How considerate of him. Well, we don't know if they had an open relationship, but I'd say the odds aren't good from what we've heard. Better luck at the next bar. This is my favorite story to tell. I'm a type 1 diabetic and my nickname where I'm from is diabetes, so everyone knows I have it even though some people would still be like, "Oh, you're actually a diabetic?" Anyways, I met this girl at a house party one of my friends was throwing. This was back in 2010, 2011. As the night goes on and drinks get consumed, we get all love drunk and go to bang it out. About halfway through our session, she randomly kicks me off and pushes me away. Stop, I can't do this. I freak out thinking that I've done something horribly wrong. What's going on? What happened? She looks straight at me and I crap you not, she says to me, I can't catch diabetes. All I could think to say was, "You've got to be fricking kidding me." Her incredible response, and again, I swear on my inability to produce insulin, I'm not making any of this up, this is word for word burned into my memory, I can't get diabetes. It's like cancer, I just can't catch it. By the time she said cancer, I had my pants back on and was running down the stairs. I get back to the party and all of my friends are like, "Whoa, look who it is, how was it?" You will never believe what the frick just happened to me. In conclusion, my type 1 diabetes not only blocked me, but apparently is a transmissible disease similar to cancer? She also wasn't lying when she said it's like cancer. Neither of them are communicable. In fact, maybe those were all separate statements. I can't do this. I can't catch diabetes. It's like cancer. I used to have hepatitis, but I swear I'm clean now. A lot of people have remarked to me that Hep C is treatable now. Let me tell you, when you've both just got back from a raging party in college, everyone's drunk and in the buff, and you're collectively about to get your Discovery Channel on, this is high on the list of things you don't want to hear. Are you sure? I'm positive. I fricking knew it. First time at this girl's apartment, we were hanging out for a while and she tells me she's always had this fantasy about being with a black guy. I figure that being one was to my advantage this situation, so cool, definitely going to get some kind of action. We're making out for like 20 minutes and she gets undressed and I get undressed and we start getting really close to each other and she goes, "Wait, stop." So I back off and she goes, No, keep going." So I position myself back over her and she goes, "Please don't." So I get up, done with it at this point, and she gets mad. "You're ruining it. You're supposed to force me to." It's been like 8 years and still nothing as crazy as being an unwitting participant in someone else's, forced fantasy. She clearly had a very specific fantasy in mind, but she's at fault for not bringing it up beforehand. Finding out she's pregnant and still with the guy. Well, at least you knew you weren't going to get her pregnant. At the bar one night and it was pretty packed. I finally made it to the bar and this definite cougar comes over and starts hitting on me hard. I talk her up a bit but play it cool. She's not bad looking, but I'm not sure if I'm down just yet. I finally ask her what she'll have to drink. I wanted to just go ahead and buy her the drink, so maybe she'd back off a bit since I knew that's what she wanted. Got her some sugary mixed shot and she threw it back, leaned in lightning fast and laid her lips on me. I pulled back after a second as this hot younger chick ran up and screamed, "Mom, get out of here! You're ruining my night!" Instantly turned around and got away from that fricked up family reunion. We had a party at my house with roommates. I passed out sitting on the couch. I woke up with a raging hard-on and my roommate's wife, in only her pink bathrobe, was rubbing my wang through my pants while her husband was lustfully watching. I jumped up, spilled my beer all over myself and went to bed. "Did you move out? 'Cause I'd imagine it would be pretty frickin' awkward around there after that." I moved out a few months later. We never spoke of it. I found they replaced me with a cam girl they met online, which means my old room must be her new studio. Prior to divorce, wife wanted to have unprotected fun out of nowhere, after literally 6 months of refusing to put out. And I suspected she was trying to get pregnant to prevent the impending separation. Nope. Or she'd barebacked someone else and wanted you to foot the bill. I felt something rubbing against me while I was inside, and after feeling around in there, I removed a very grey, very soggy, old tampon. That was the end of the night for me. I mean, you probably saved her a trip to the ER. I was the noped-on person, and I don't blame the dude. Short version, I started crying about my ex and threw up. I literally never throw up from drinking, so that was a weird one for me. At least we were in my place, and I made it to the bathroom. Yeah, he noped, and I cried and begged him not to leave. After that, I decided drinking with a broken heart is a bad idea. Well, at least you have the hindsight to learn from the experience. Hope things are going better for you now. A girl I used to date and I were doing the deed in the dark. Unbeknownst to me, my nose started bleeding. I went to grab her chest, and they were wet as frick. It took me a while to realize what was going on, but once I did, I immediately stopped. It was pretty embarrassing as she was covered in blood. It was a really hot summer with no AC, so apparently she just thought I was sweating intensely. Asking me to just take her when she wasn't expecting it. To be clear, she had a fantasy of being taken against her will, whereas it was my very first time to be getting it in, so to speak. I was not okay with it. Finding out the guy, who at the moment had me in a very uncompromising position, got off on the idea of forcefully infecting others with a transmissible disease. I didn't stick around long enough to see if he was actually serious. I stopped hooking up for a good long while after that one. Got to his place, walked into a room and saw that it was completely bare except for a couple of lights and a tarp spread across the floor. Immediately turned around and walked out the door, got in my car and left. Don't know what the tarp was for. He was either going to murder me or wanted me to pee on him. Either way, nope. Nope.
Do you like Huey Lewis and the News?
Is that a raincoat?
The dog jumped on the bed and started to lick the girl down there and she didn't push the dog away.
She took off her shoes and the smell could have killed a horse. It nearly killed me. Smelled like a hobo in a recycling room. The mood was killed, I was nearly killed, I left both disgusted and concerned. Pretty girl though. Almost lost my virginity, but I didn't because of Pokemon. I was a teenage virgin in a long-distance relationship. Boyfriend calls, says his parents will be out of town and I should come over. I scramble, trying to figure out what people wear to do this, and we didn't even have Walmart in my town to buy lingerie, let alone somewhere classy. I make the 2-hour drive, we started making out in his bed, get a little hot and heavy, and I undress down to my hottest undies. He gets up and goes to his desk, and I assume he's getting a rubber, which got him a huge bonus point from me, because it was my first time and I didn't really know how to ask about stuff like that. Instead, he pulls out a sketchbook, beams at me, opens to a page, and goes, "See this drawing of Charmander I made?" I say, "Yes," and then he comes back to bed and starts flipping through his sketchbook, showing me his Pokemon drawings while I sit there in my undies, stunned by the turn of events. We do this for a good 15 minutes, then later he tries to get us started again, but I was just not having it. We fall asleep, still virgins, and woke up to watch Power Rangers because why the frick not at that point, right? When this girl I was hooking up with kept talking about how babies brighten her day, then she insisted we didn't use protection. Wise move, my friend. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Had a great first date with this one, a blast. Went back to her place, started to hit it doggy. She reaches over to her nightstand and pulls out a rolled-up pouch, unrolls it and pulls out a syringe. Asks me if I've ever tried smack. Instant limp eggplant. I broke the frick out so quick I don't even remember getting dressed.
This thread is pretty much a PSA to keep your private parts clean. So many filthy eggplants and manky tacos. Do people not wash?
I have a few instances I can think of. Number 1, while in the middle of losing my virginity after sneaking a boy into my room, in the wee hours of the morning he suddenly jumped up and started pacing the floor. He really needed to crap, so I said the bathroom was immediately outside my door to the right. He opens the door and then slams it shut. My dad was in the kitchen, which was in clear view of my bedroom door. He ended up just standing there and crapping himself. I'll never forget that smell. And I didn't have air freshener, so I sprayed some flying insect spray that had a sweet smell to it. Anyway, when the coast was clear, I escorted him to the bathroom where he gets in the shower. I had to make it look like it was me showering, therefore, I had to sit in the bathroom while his crappy boxers stunk up the place. He gets out, puts his boxers in a few plastic bags, and changes into fresh clothes. Then he tries to continue doing the deed. I was like,
You can go out the window?
We still keep in touch on Facebook and he uses that as a funny story to tell our mutual friends. Number 2, I picked up a dude at a bar who was hands down the funniest person I'd ever met, and that was severely attractive to me. It also helped that he was just generally attractive. While going down, he asked me if I could take some pictures of him with his phone. I grab it and as I'm taking the picture, his girlfriend sends him a goodnight text. I just hand him the phone, and he lets out an exhausted sigh. She won't stop telling me she loves me and I don't want to lead her on. Okay, kind of uncomfortable, but we keep doing the deed. He starts to get very rough with me, biting everywhere, making my lips bleed, calling me a whore, basically using me as a doll. Which would have been fine if discussed beforehand. I don't like to be ambushed. Then he grabs me by the throat and demanded I told him I loved him. Freaked me the frick out because of his crazy eyes. I had this intense sense of dread that's hard to describe, but it felt like in that moment I was in danger, so I just pushed him off me, grabbed my clothes, completely wordless, and literally walked into the apartment complex hallway in the bath where I got dressed in the stairs. Number 3, and last but not least, the guy who, while I was lying undressed on his bed waiting for him, proceeds to casually pull out a syringe from his nightstand and shoots up right in front of me. He slid onto the floor giggling, and I just got dressed and left without him even noticing. Very blatant, very obvious warts down there. He said they were skin tags. Dude, I know warts when I see them, and I don't need that stuff in my butt. Did the deed on the 3rd date. Things were going well, and then as we're lying there, she says, "Now that we're in a relationship, I need to be the one in charge. That means no adult magazines and I need to access your Facebook account and email so that I know you aren't cheating on me." I noped out of that one.
An honest question. Did she think you couldn't get like a million new Gmail addresses for any hush-hush stuff even if you gave her your main address? Oh, and zero trust is a wonderful thing to build a relationship on.
I was going down on a lady on her couch when she stopped me. She rolled onto the floor and reverse army crawled into her dog's bed and told me to take her there. Her 2 Cocker Spaniels were now awake, standing at attention on the side of their bed. I noped the frick out of that scene. Look, folks, if you're doing the deed and are both into this, then as far as I'm concerned, you can do whatever you want in your own home. But it is a bold move to try to move into this without discussing it with your partner first. Met a girl at a club and went back to her house. Everything is going fine, nothing out of the ordinary, until her housemate comes home. I was like, maybe we should stop, or at least close the door? She replies with, "Oh no, it's okay. He likes to listen and sometimes he watches from the hallway." She wasn't joking either. I put my clothes back on and walk out, and there he was, just giving himself a good time in the frickin' hallway. I was on vacation in the Dominican shortly after graduating high school with 5 of my friends. Met this cute Bolivian girl in our resort, and we hit it off. A few hours later, I'm in her room. We're going at it. She repositions onto her hands and knees and tells me to put it in her butt. I ask for lube and she hands me a bottle. I was giddy with excitement because I'd always wanted to do this. I lather up both of us and slowly slide it in, but she had clearly done this a few times before now. Now I'm pumping her hard and have thrown caution to the wind. We hear a keycard go into her door and the handle turn. She frantically whispers, "Novio," boyfriend, and I realize that I have 3 seconds before I get my butt beat. I pull out at lightning speed and she yelps, liquid crap sprays all over my stomach and wang, and I grab my shorts off the floor and run out of the balcony and hop the ledge. Thank God that room was on the first floor. I don't think the guy chased me, but I sprinted away. Still very much in the buff and definitely covered in crap. I cleaned myself in the ocean and hit the bar. I just love the image of her boyfriend coming in and seeing her undressed on the bed with a stream of crap all over the mattress.
I wonder if the absolute shock of seeing that maybe distracted him from realizing the full context of the situation.
We should get you to a doctor. That's the 3rd time this week. Went to a very alternative punk girl's place for a booty call. She said she wanted to take a bath together and I was all for that. She goes to run water while I finish my drink. We're getting into it and head to the bathroom. We strip down and I get in the bathtub and sit down. Then I looked up at her and she was pulling razor blades out of a cabinet. She wanted to cut me and have me cut her. Nope. I have never gone from soaking wet to fully clothed and walking down a sidewalk so quickly in my life. I ghosted that girl and I have no regrets. She started rubbing my chest in the exact same way my ex used to, and I realized I was still super in love with her and started to cry. She noped the frick out of there. It was after a hookup. I wanted to leave and he tried to cling on to me saying, "Oh, please don't go. I want to show you to my roommate."
Spoiler alert, his roommate was in the freezer in pieces.
Her son coming into the room and sitting down to play Xbox and her telling me it was okay to keep going.
Playing Xbox, he's probably used to people fricking his mum by that point.
When she took off her undies, it immediately smelled like 8 cans of shark crap. I told her I needed a cigarette and hit Mach 3 out of there. She had 5 stars tattooed just above her hoo-ha. Wasn't going to lay pipe, but with ratings like that. I let a woman take me home from a pub here in Edinburgh. She seemed a little bit sleazy, but she had a J-cup, honestly, that had sort of got stuck in my eye and my imagination. When we got to our place, it was about 2 a.m. There were like 7 kids running around the flat, eating cake and candy and drinking iron brew straight from 2-litre bottles. They were, most of them, about 12 years or less of age, except one sullen 16 to 17-year-old boy who sprawled in the chair staring at me, and the dog running around. I went to the toilet and there was dog crap in the bathtub. The wheels for my mega bosom fantasy night had just fallen off the wagon. I sort of didn't know what to do at first. I didn't want to stay, but I didn't want to tell her in front of our little tribe that I wanted to bail, and then have to sit there and wait for the taxi to turn up on the outskirts of the city, in a housing estate, and risk some sort of confrontation that could turn into a horror show. So I went to bed and fooled around a little bit and then claimed to be too drunk. She drove me home in the morning. No way I was getting involved in that scene. My ex didn't have a rubber, so he wanted to use a sandwich bag instead. I left with so many unanswered questions in my head like, did this guy really ask to use a sandwich bag? Is that a thing? Are people really using sandwich bags as protection? During my drunken single heyday, I met a woman at a bar during my friend's birthday outing with whom I hit it off. We even made out in one of the restrooms. Sleazy, I know. We get back to her place and she informs me that her roommate will be home soon. Turns out he was her on and off again boyfriend who had helped her, financially, to get through her cancer treatment. Overwhelmed and quite uncomfortable, I decided to bolt, despite her insistence. After I left her apartment, I managed to get myself lost in the building and couldn't find a viable exit. I ended up having to crawl out of a window and managed to get out onto the street side near the building. I walked toward the main drag and ran into the birthday boy. We had a drink and parted ways. Single life in New York City never gets old. Spooning after first date wild fun times, he hugs me like a vice and says he's going to take me to Vegas tomorrow and we'll get married. He was dead serious. I was a puff of smoke. For the train of people saying, "You got Mosby'd," and living in the slim hope that I can resurrect my inbox, here's the tail end of this little snapshot into my fun time nopes. I wasn't Mosby'd that time anyway. Whatever the female corollary to "don't put your wang in crazy" is, it applied to this sitch instead. He harassed me for weeks, but silver lining also revealed himself as one of the greatest insult artists on the planet. I wasn't even fully terrified half the time because his diatribes were genius. A few months later, he had found a new target and married her. They're raising his young daughter together and he continues his job as a paramedic, who might just roll up to your car wreck if you live in Atlanta. Every time I see an ambulance from that particular service, I still hold my breath. Managers, what is a Karen experience like, and what was your worst experience?
Oh, I loved Karens when I was managing. Being able to say, "Actually, I am the manager," followed by, "Sorry, that's company policy," always results in a flustered Karen leaving in a huff and a much relieved crew.
Yep, then I would get,
"Well, give me your boss's cell number."
"Absolutely not. There's no way in hell I'm giving out his number. You can come in tomorrow when he's here or call us."
"I'll give him the corporate number."
Corporate doesn't give a crap about Karen complaints, and if they do follow up, I explain the situation. Give them the corporate number of your competitor. How delightfully evil. Delightfully devilish, Seymour. Corporate doesn't care, true, but they will solve the problem by giving Karen free stuff. "Sorry you had a problem, Mom. Here's a card for 3 free pizzas." My worst Karen was a beauty pageant mum, wanted me to pay for an ad in the back of the patent flyer for $200, claimed she ordered all the time. That's about 20 orders a year, Karen, before I even count expenses. The pageant isn't even being held in my area. Sorry, Karen. When I was working at a bookstore, my mum once called our corporate number because my coworker wouldn't release my work schedule. She was crazy. I bought that coworker a coffee.
Oh, the best is when they ask for the manager, but you are the manager.
It's not as awesome as it sounds. After that, you have to sit there and listen to them whine, knowing full well that if you work for a chain, they'll just file a complaint with corporate, get free products, and you'll have to see them again and possibly get written up. Happened before I became manager, but once while I was serving at Steak and Shake, customer had a coupon for burger, fries, and a shake for X amount of money, can't remember the price anymore. Anyway, on the coupon it specifically stated that cheese on the burger was 39 cents upcharge, although it did have a picture of the burger with cheese on it. Lady threw a fit in the dining room that I was treating her unfairly. It was false advertising, etc., etc. I told her I agree it's false advertising with the picture, but the text specifically states the upcharge and unfortunately I can't do anything about it. The lady at the next table over heard everything and literally got up and put 50 cents on the table to cover it and said something to the effect of,
"I'll pay for your damn cheese if you just shut up."
This teed the lady off even more. My manager obviously sensed the issue and came out, took the cheese up charge of the bill. Like, what the frick, Karen?
Love how the other lady, I think I'll call her Laren, is like the anti-Karen. She probably has daughters.
Oh, to be so bold as to call Karens and Kens out when you see them acting out in public. One day, YouTube narrator, one day you'll realize your full heroic potential. I once had a customer tell me, "Frick you," after arguing with me over 5 cents. He apparently rounded the 3 down, which made me owe him 5 cents. After about 2 minutes of arguing, he stormed off. For the record, the cash register told me exactly how much change to give. Work at a vacuum repair shop. People don't pay attention to their vacuum cleaners as much as you'd think. I can't tell you how many times someone's come in to pick up their vacuum and says, "Oh, this isn't mine," or "Mine didn't have scratches down the side." I can tell you it is, and it came in with all those scratches on the side. After the first 2 times it happened to me, we started taking pictures of the unit with serial numbers and customer info, send them home with the serial number, and require them to bring it back for pickup. Despite the evidence, we've had a lady close to tears because we didn't have her vacuum, even with the pictures we had of it at drop-off, her information, and the matching serial numbers. Sure, it's a big conspiracy, we just love taking in vacuums and switching all the information around because it's fun. People need to pay more attention. I used to work at Geek Squad and once had this happen when a lady came in to pick up her laptop. She explained that it was all of her information, but the laptop itself wasn't hers. It's like they took all my stuff and put it into a different laptop. Spoke with her daughter. Turns out she was in the early stages of Alzheimer's. That was my first experience with the disease, and man did it hit hard. And she wasn't even a relative. I had a male version of a Karen, a Ken. Fairly wealthy, very entitled, and just a butt to work with. We were the contractors doing an extensive remodel of his home, and one of the light fixtures his designers chose was this expensive, custom-order chandelier with a no-return policy. We made sure he signed off on the spec sheet with a picture of the fixture and the no-return policy highlighted. When the chandelier was delivered, he insisted he'd never seen it before and definitely hadn't approved it. He kept insisting on this even after we showed him his signature on the order, even suggesting we'd forged it to cover our mistake on our part. Yeah, because I'm going to go way out of my way to make my life more difficult like that. I used to work part-time at a bakery inside a grocery store. I dealt with my fair share of Karens during this time. Just to paint this picture of how it would work, we had a binder with laminated copies of 100 different designs the decorators did regularly. A customer would look through the book, pick a design they wanted, and fill me in on the details of when they wanted it by, what size, what flavor, if any color changes were necessary, etc. Our decorators would come in at 7 a.m. and stay for however long it took to complete their orders, so usually they were gone by early to mid-afternoon. The bakery closed along with the store at 9 p.m. One day, around 8:15 or 8:20, a woman comes in and says she needs a cake. I figure she's referring to the cakes sitting in our cooler, which we keep at the ready in case anybody just wants something quick and simple. So I motion to the cooler and ask if she sees anything she likes. Apparently, I'm a gosh darn brilliant comedian because she starts laughing and goes, "No, sweetie, I need a wedding cake." Alright, no big deal. I grab an order form and take down her information, then ask what day she needs it for. Tonight. Mind you, the store is closing in 40 minutes, so even if I could decorate a cake, I wouldn't be able to help her. I tell her that there's no decorators present at the moment, but I could make sure it was ready for her first thing in the morning. She's clearly upset by this, but says that'd be fine. I continue taking her order and ask her what size she'd like. Our bakery was not an upscale joint and our prices reflect that. Just about everything comes in frozen. So for our cakes, they come in a variety of predetermined sizes. She pulls out her phone and thrusts it in my face, saying, "Whatever that is." On the screen is a very beautiful cake, smooth white frosting, 7 to 8 tiers, decorations made in fondant and blown sugar. Before I even continue taking the order and dash her hopes when she sees the finished product, I tell her that just wouldn't be possible. I didn't mean to offend our decorators, but I told her the truth. Most of them were exceptionally gifted home bakers who didn't have formal training in terms of a culinary program or decorating school. I then politely refer her to a more upscale bakery that I knew of that's more equipped to help her than we were. Then the dreaded 6 words came. "Can I speak to your manager?" At this point in time, I'd been working at that bakery for a little over a year, so I was capable enough to close the department on my own. As such, I was the only one there. I told her this, but offered to leave a note with the customer's name and number so my manager could call her back. Fine then, let me talk to the store manager. There were anywhere between 1 to 3 store managers who oversaw the entire grocery store and all its departments on staff at night. So I go to our phone and page a store manager over to the bakery department. The whole time we're waiting, she's staring daggers into me. A manager I was fairly friendly with came to the counter in a few minutes and asked what the problem was. I briefed her before she went to talk to the customer. The second we get over there, the customer starts spewing lies about me, how I was rude and refusing to help her. I tried to defend myself, but the manager just told me to keep doing my closing work out back. 10 minutes later, she comes back, shaking her head and rubbing her temples. That witch was crazy. Customer service industry is just a blast, guys. Wedding planning really brings out the worst in some people. If you need the cake right now, I guess very little planning was involved. Wait, she wanted a multi-tiered cake done that night? From a supermarket? Wow! I was the only person on shift, which made me the de facto manager. 5 minutes before closing, a woman comes in and is so angry that we don't have any decaf. She demands to speak to the manager, and I tell her that's me because I'm the only one here, and the coffee pots are cleaned for the night because it's 5 minutes to close. No, I'm sorry, I can't make another pot just for her. There's another place around the corner. She screams at me, telling me she's going to find a real manager and get my hoary butt fired. Throws half a cup of cappuccino machine sludge at me and starts to look like she's going to jump the counter. I'm holding a hammer under the counter, thinking, don't do it, don't do it. I pick up the phone like I'm going to call the cops. She leaves. I lock the door. She comes back and runs face first into the glass door like a bird. Oh, sweet, sweet karma. I hope that for comedic effect she also left a full face print of makeup on the window, and to warn off other foul predators. Did she give herself brain damage? Fall down? Make eye contact? That's alpha as frick. We need the thrilling conclusion to this saga. Oh, she fell. At that point, I thought, okay, I may be looking at a middle-class white lady's first time trying serious substances. And I did regretfully have to call the cops to get her so that I could go home without her trying to eat my face or something. She screamed the B word, the C word, implied that I did the deed with men for money, the whole time while I waited for them. When they came and started talking to her, she yelled at them and then calmed the frick down once she realized what was happening. They walked her away from the store. After that, I have no idea because I jogged home pretty quick. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. The staff didn't know it at the time, but our ketchup dispenser was empty. A boy, aged 10ish, was just smashing down on the handle trying to get ketchup, but none was being dispensed. A staff member noticed the kid smashing finally, so I went out to see what was going on. Oh, the ketchup is empty. I'll get a new bag from the kitchen. Give me 2 minutes and I'll be right back with some new ketchup. I remove the empty container, take it back to the kitchen, clean the dispenser, and place in a new bag. Take it out to the condiment stand and get met by a Karen.
Why did you take the ketchup away from my son?
The ketchup was empty, ma'am, so I replaced the bag.
Why did you take the ketchup away? Go get your manager.
Okay, 1 minute. I walk about 2 meters, turn around, and introduce myself as the manager.
Why did you take the ketchup away from my son?
Mom, please lower your voice. The ketchup was empty. I explained to your son that I needed to take it back to the kitchen and refill it.
No, you didn't. I was standing here the whole time. You took the ketchup away from my son.
Ma'am, please lower your voice. You were not with your son. He was here alone, trying to get ketchup, which was empty.
Don't you tell me what to do. Do you know who you're dealing with?
Nope. Mom, please get your belongings and leave this establishment. Cue the screaming and yelling part of the encounter.
I will not leave this establishment. I'm going to burn this place down.
Other patrons are visibly upset with what they're witnessing. Police are called. Karen gives a statement. Police question me. I give a statement. Karen told the police that I struck her son, pushed him out of the way, and moved the ketchup to an area in which her son couldn't get access to the ketchup. I disputed the claim and offered to provide video evidence with sound of what actually happened. Police watch the video once, thank me, and walk out to the eating area. Ma'am, does your son have someone who can look after him?
His father is at work right now.
Okay, you're being placed under arrest for making threats and a false police report. More yelling, threats, and now tears. In the end, she was charged with making the false police report, but not the threats, and received a lifetime ban from not just our restaurant, but the entire mall our restaurant was located in. I felt kind of bad, not for the Karen, but for her son. He has to live with that. Eating at a cheap, greasy spoon kind of diner that had been around since the 50s. All the meat is frozen, pretty much nothing but the coffee or eggs are made fresh. You know what you're getting when you come to this place. A couple comes in with their 2 young boys. I'd estimate 6 to 7 for either. Mum makes a minor scene about not wanting a booth, wanting a table. There's an entire wall of booths and multiple tables, but she specifically wants the one in the middle of the room that needs to be bussed since the people that were using it just left. She makes a minor scene about having to wait for the one busboy who was handling the entire front of house to come take care of it, when the manager went and got him to take care of it immediately. At this point, I'm not paying too much attention, but they're literally sitting right next to us. They order appetizers, steak, shakes for the kids, etc. Their waitress is handling several other tables at the same time, like a third of the floor, and serves some coffee and sliced pie to an elderly couple that came in after the family. The Karen throws an absolute hissing crap fit because,
we were here first. How come they're getting their orders first?
Manager comes back out and explains in the most placid tones possible that multiple fried goods and steak take time to cook, but hot coffee is available all day and sliced pie is in a display up front, so there's no prep time. Karen calms down, but fumes. Doesn't allow the boys to get their food, buffet option, until her and Dad's food comes to the table.
Once the adult food arrives, Karen just starts tucking in. Both boys are just tall enough to see over the edge of the buffet, but not nearly enough to reach tongs or reasonably serve themselves. A waitress from another section sees them struggling and comes over to help, asking what they want on their plates. Karen flies to her feet and makes a big scene this time about, "How dare you tell my kids what they can and cannot eat? Who do you think you are, handling their food?" Queue manager coming out again, following demands to complain directly. Waitress is an older woman, we're talking white hair, and is nearly in tears thinking that she's done something terrible. Manager asks her to go chill in the back for a bit while she smooths things over with Karen. Karen demands balloons, they had them as a special birthday thing, for her kids. They get balloons, Karen calms down, husband and kids are pretty quiet. Kids seem visibly embarrassed, husband is acting like this is pretty normal. Husband's steak comes out last. He's unenthusiastic about it, and Karen calls for the manager a fourth time to chew her out over the steak being overdone, dry, etc. They send it back and demand another, then a third. Let me reiterate, this is a place you go for like greasy burgers and fries, fish and chips, etc. Steak is on the menu, but realistic expectations and reason means you're not expecting high quality. You're getting what you pay for. Manager just kept calm and kept apologizing for their suboptimal experience, but beyond filling minor low-cost demands, the balloons for example, they didn't offer up much. When Karen basically screamed that they would never be coming back, the manager was just like, "Sorry to hear that, have a nice night." Absolute pro at grey rocking. Bestest of the best interactions I ever had, Karen griped about not wanting to pay the price for the services performed on her computer, which was exactly the price quoted when she dropped it off and which she had signed for. She demanded to speak to the service manager. I called him from the back. Service manager listened to her spiel as to how she should get a lower price because, irrelevant pea-brained reason. Service manager made eye contact with me over her shoulder. I didn't react. He said no. Price quoted was the price that should be charged. She said that was unacceptable and she would be complaining to the owner, who was a good friend of hers. Service manager observed that she was evidently not a good friend since that he, or me, was the person she was originally speaking with when she asked for the service manager. Her face was glorious and made the whole thing worthwhile. This kind of interaction seems to be a sort of dream for a lot of people. Perhaps it will motivate all of you to perform to your utmost at your job so that you too can own the store that a Karen lies about her connections to. I'm not in retail anymore, but I was managing a popular mid-range handbag store. Think typical Karen bag, about $200 to $400. Anyway, most customers were fantastic. This one woman was this Shrek-looking large red-headed lady who stomped in and demanded that we repair her 20-year-old bag for free. And if we couldn't do that, she demanded that we exchange this old ratty, smelly 20-year-old bag for a brand new one for her. Recently, policy changes had resulted in new prices for this service, but free repairs had about a 1-year warranty on a new bag, not a 20-year-old one. I tell her as such. I was pretty young to have the role I did, so she, dissatisfied with my answer, asked to speak to a manager. I told her I'm the manager, and she began turning as red as her hair. She screamed and yelled about how she'll call corporate and never shop here again. Well, that sounds like a real loss, losing a customer that's too cheap to repair a 20-year-old bag and hasn't bought new from us in just as long. I give her my best crap-eating grin and say, "I'm so sorry, that's just the policy." She demands corporate's number. I give her the customer service line that you can find on Google, unbeknownst to her. She huffs away, forgetting her keys on the counter. She's halfway out and she remembers, turns around, red as a beet, huffs in my smiling face and snatches the keys off the counter. It was hilarious. She came back months later, worked with a different person on the team and didn't even look my way. Oh, heck yes. Buckle up. I worked as a manager at a chain barbecue restaurant. We'll call it Popular Charlie's. There was this lady who we called Nacho Lady. I'll get into why. She was that kind of overweight, holistic living, anti-vax, essential oil military wife. My 2-year-old daughter who I talk to like a coherent adult is going to change the world type lady. With all the Karen aesthetics to match. We all dreaded her when she came in. We call her Nacho Lady because whenever she comes by, she orders our nachos at our takeout area. No big deal, but she would want everything on the side, which again, no big deal in most situations because I understand that nachos get soggy, especially to go. But what some people don't like or understand is seeing the actual proportions of everything. 2 ounces of anything really isn't that much.
That goes for the cheese, chili, beans, nacho sauce, all the works. Even though it's all proportioned equally, the customer doesn't like what they see, and that's where the backlash began with the nacho lady, and then the Karen moment started happening. She didn't like the actual proportions, and wanted and demanded more, but refused to pay for it. Our takeout specialists were good enough at standing up for themselves and the rules. Of course, she didn't accept it, so she had to speak to a manager, myself or 2 others, depending on the day. She would also order 2 kids' meals, pork sandwiches and fries. Again, no big deal, but she was very particular about this one as well. The pork had to be dry, no barbecue sauce, in a separate container. Kids' buns toasted, which we don't usually do. The fries had to be dropped as soon as she walks in the door so they're crispy and fresh for when she takes them all the way home. Because of her extreme specifications, it got to the point where only a manager was allowed to take her order, and only a manager could review the order with her. This was always the most nerve-wracking part because she would sit down at our waiting table in the takeout area and open every single box and inspect everything, which we would typically do in the first place, but the way she went about it was very Karen. This was when all the issues would start to happen. Fries were never hot and fresh and crispy enough, sent back to get new ones. Not enough of the portioned pork for the kids' sandwich, demand more. Not enough cheese sauce and shredded cheese, demand more. Not enough tortilla chips, you know, the rest. The list goes on, and to top it all off, she somehow got a hold of a crap ton of free kids' meal coupons that were blank, meaning no manager signature, dates, or any sort of validation that she got legit. A coupon is no big deal, but a typical coupon can only be used one at a time with one transaction. But Karen, being a Karen, demanded that we use 2 out of a giant stack so she gets her kids' meals for free. This got to the point where things had to be run by the GM, even if it means calling him on his day off. He was a bit of a pushover and always allowed it, but she started costing us money. It wasn't feasible for her to keep coming back and having her as a customer, because 19 out of 20 times we would end up having to send stuff back to the kitchen, which would get wasted. My other manager, Billy Joe, was a fierce B-word that never let anyone walk over her. She was awesome. She finally stepped up and made a call over the GM's order and 86'd her. When that moment came, we all huddled in the office and watched the security cameras as Billy Joe ripped her a new one. That was an unforgettable day. I left and got out of the restaurant industry and management because of how toxic that field can be. But I do love that I have a Karen story. I worked at an REI for a while. One story comes to mind involving an ex-Marine who worked at our store fixing bikes. He had to run to the back to grab a part, and as he was going back to the bike shop on the other side of the store, a customer who was already pretty loud and aggressive with everyone decided to grab my coworker by the arm and very aggressively try to spin him around to face him. Marine training kicked in, and the next thing I know, angry customer man is laying in the remains of a display about 8 feet away. Of course, he jumps up screaming and yelling that he's going to sue us and get my coworker fired, and we're all going to jail, yada yada yada. Manager comes out, heard the story, looks at the security footage, and tells the customer he's never allowed to grab employees like that. He's welcome to call the cops if he would like, because she's willing to press charges against him for assault, and he was banned from our store. No one at the store was upset about losing that customer. He was kind of notorious for being a jerk and constantly trying to abuse our return policy. What red flags in interviews have made you decline a job offer? I was once asked during a job interview about my tolerance to verbal attacks. When the person noticed that I was a bit taken aback by the question, he quickly followed up and said to keep in mind he was talking about verbal attacks and not physical ones. I immediately realized that this would not be a job for me, and I excused myself from further consideration for the position. What kind of job was it? And did the interviewer mean verbal attacks from customers or coworkers, or worse yet, the boss? I can see how that could be a red flag for some positions, but if you're applying for telesales or jobs where you're likely to have to deal with angry customers, being able to handle verbal attacks is vital. Interviewer has visible anger issues with other staff. I encountered this at the beginning of my career. They didn't hire me, which was good. I've legit watched a manager unleash on his coworkers not knowing that I could see him because I was early in my interview. Coincidentally, I took the job just because I knew it would be short-term and my friend worked there. Didn't even get to the interview. Got a call to set up an interview. I say, okay, I can do Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. He says, I need you to come in today. Okay, I need a job, so I say I can try. Where do I need to go? He was an hour away by car. I said I couldn't, and he got all huffy. Like, dude, if you're this crappy when I don't work for you, I don't even want to know how you treat employees. If they need you to interview them right now, then they need you to start working for them right now. Absolutely do not accept their job offer unless you're absolutely desperate yourself. Exactly, I looked it up on Glassdoor, and it was very grim. My fiancé had a guy that called for a same-day interview, and he was verbally attacking my fiancé for not being able to come in because our county was under a travel ban because it was a fricking blizzard outside. He passed on that job, obviously. I had a job offer me unpaid bonus hours as a form of community service. Reminded me of seeing a job posting that said with the position you'd enjoy the variety of working various shifts, holidays, and weekends as needed. Yes, because that's something anyone would enjoy. Was invited to interview for a remote position, but did some research and found out they made employees install software that took a photo of their face every 9 minutes to ensure they weren't goofing off. Can you imagine? I don't want my employer to have a huge collection of the awkward facial expressions I make. Declined interview. Take 1,000 photos of your face staring at the monitor, install a virtual webcam software, and run those photos in an endless loop. You are now invisible. Make sure you wear the same color shirt to work each day. Over the various bad workplace compilations like this that I've done, one thing has become very clear. There are a great many companies out there that would identify the social conditions of George Orwell's 1984 as a goal to aspire to rather than a social warning. It's a red flag for me if they stumble over what the exact job description is. Or if they say, we'll work that out later. Or if they say, duties as assigned. I've seen this looking for jobs as a software engineer. For us anyway, this isn't a red flag because it's impossible to determine all the duties required when the product itself is ever evolving. For example, I was asked to set up a few build machines because I took good notes when I onboarded, although that was never in the job description. We were a small company, so it made sense to have few engineers handle things such as this, rather than hire another employee to handle all of it. Oh, and they say, you decide how much you make. I agree, meaning that if you take that job, it'll be brutal work to go over minimum wage. When you walk through the site and you don't see a single person smiling. I don't mean those fake customer service smiles either. If everyone there looks miserable, I'm out. Life is too short for that. Even worse, when a couple of people are shaking their head no when you make eye contact with them. I had one person do that to me when I was being interviewed for a personal assistant job. He kept looking at me, then I noticed the subtle head shakes. He was leaving. I would have been taking over his position. The woman did seem a tad nightmarish. I declined when the guy left. Glad he gave me warning. Oh, I totally agree, but I also want to tell you how it is at my workplace. Most of the time while working, we're having an absolute blast and joking around all the time. But if our boss walks past us with a stranger, we all close our mouths and continue working, but very focused on our work, so we don't make the impression that our whole workshop is filled with a bunch of absolute goofballs. In a lot of industries, we work really long hours sometimes, so we're really looking for someone who's willing to put in the hours and is interested in making a bigger impact. Is code for, we're looking for someone to sacrifice their weekends on the altar of our arbitrary goals and expectations because we can't be bothered to pay a second person for the role. It's the old, we work hard and play hard deal. That just means everyone works long hours and then goes out to happy hour once a week. Happy hour slowly becomes something that kind of feels like more work and something that you're obligated to go to. Or becomes one donut on Friday, and only one donut. We had the mythical company fishing trip that was promised for the end of every season. I finally shut that crap down forever one hot day when the boss asked, "Where would you like to go on the company fishing trip?" This year, I said, I would actually like to go fishing, and it was never mentioned again. I used to be in commercial fishing, and one of my first skippers gave me this advice. When you're checking out a potential boat to take position on, make sure to look at the engine room first. If it's neat, clean, and orderly, then that's a solid vessel to be working on. If it's filthy, cluttered, and in disarray, then get off the boat and don't take the job. Oh, please expand. I'm interested to know the reasoning behind this. The type of captain that allows the most important part of his vessel to be a huge mess all the time is also the type to cut corners and operate in a generally unsafe manner while out at sea. I'm sure there's plenty of exceptions to this, but when my life is in their hands for months at a time, I want to know darn well that they can take condition of their vessel seriously. Arr. Additionally, a well-kept boat is a sign of a good crew. Pay on a fishing boat is dependent upon the value of the catch. You'll earn more on a good crew. Most of my work has been lineman work for cable or telephone providers and driving trucks, and if they start asking about prior workers' comp claims, then I'm out. I've had owners ask me if I got hurt, would I allow them to let them take care of it and keep the government out of it? Yeah, no way.
We're lax on safety and unwilling to improve, so we'd rather cover up problems than prevent them. Your health and well-being mean nothing to us.
Anyone using the phrase work hard and play hard during the interview? I once asked, what exactly do you mean by play hard, with air quotes around play hard? The interviewer was befuddled and then said something like, we get donuts and bagels once per quarter. Man, talk about living on the fricking edge.
We don't offer benefits, job security, or dignity. However, we do have a foosball table and a coffee machine in the break room.
Yep, if you want your work to have a great atmosphere, treat your employees well. Don't just have some weird forced socialization once a year where you're jammed into the break room with the one employee that can only talk about photos of their cat. Right after college, I got an interview to be a store manager for an Abercrombie & Fitch clothing store. Before the interview, I was told to dress in my own personal style, but that in clothes would be preferred. I was given a list of what that meant. At the interview, I was asked to make fun of or be judgmental of people walking around us, what they were wearing, their style, hairstyles, designs, or shirts, etc. For example, when a lady walked past us wearing jeans and red Mickey Mouse sweatshirt, the lady interviewing me scoffed and said,
"Can you believe her wearing that out in public? I mean, what is she, like 12?
I shrugged and said, what does it matter if that's her style? I didn't get the job. I realized she was trying to see if I was a judgmental prick, and when I wasn't, she chose not to hire me. Later on, I found out this was standard practice for Abercrombie.
You should have just gone way too far immediately. Looks like her gunt is sticking out.
They look like they murdered a homeless person to get that outfit.
Just make a real frickin' meal out of it, you know?
Or take the opportunity to roast the interviewer.
Like, what is that top you're wearing? What are you trying to do? Signal the aliens from the cosmos with all those sequins? Also, I would prefer not to work weekends. When can I start?
I used to work at their headquarters and my job was basically to fold clothes, apply tags, and sort them. Their CEO at the time, I think his name is Michael Jeffries or something. Anyway, he's a crazy substance head in his 50s, and he used to walk by every now and again and give people fist bumps and referred to us as dude and bro. We were all either young 20s or teenagers. He also had calf implants and wore mandals around everywhere. Seeing your anecdote about that company doesn't surprise me at all, being that their CEO was trying to live his teen years while running the company. Last year, I declined an offer to work at a company with a couple of friends for 2 reasons. 1, as part of the interview process, I had to complete an assignment, and I hated the assignment. 2, I got a vibe from my friends that they weren't super happy at the company. Since turning down the offer, both of the friends have complained to me about their boss, and one of them told me that their unlimited paid time off policy basically doesn't mean anything because they don't get to take much time off.
Absolutely. In my company, paid time off is called earned time, because you earn it through working. The expectation is that you can use up that time whenever you want, and if your manager doesn't like it, they'd better have a darn good reason to deny it. I've never heard of anyone getting denied. Much better than trying to guess exactly what the limit is to unlimited.
People who visibly show that they haven't looked at your resume. I have no issues going in depth about my experience or things that may need clarification, but to blatantly not know anything about the person interviewing shows they don't even value their potential employees at a minimum. I've interviewed way too many people that didn't know what they had on their own resume.
Well, that's different. Some people are chronic liars, but you can kind of tell once you sit down with them. When I was an OPS manager for a delivery company, I got a lot of those, and it's amazing how many people will lie for even a super basic job.
You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Asking for a fee before you can get started.
The extra E stands for expense.
Jobs pay you, pyramid schemes ask you to buy their crap up front and sell them. This happened to me. I made the right decision noping the frick out of there despite being desperate for a job at the time. Stress interview. I walked into one of these for a PhD interview. They deliberately were abrasive and unhelpful to the point of callousness, including tossing my entire proposal out of the window. After proposing a different approach, I then got criticized for not reading up on the proposal that they had given me in the same interview. Also, my lack of skills for such an approach, again given to me in the gosh darn interview. I was happy to change approach, but I can't generate years worth of experience with a click of my fingers. They ended up offering me a position, but without funding. Then I asked them if they had any ideas on where to apply for funding for this niche area. No response, I just ignored them after that. If anyone tries that on me in another job, I'm walking straight out the door. Life is too short for such nonsense. If they ask if you're on medications, and if so, what medications and why?
That's definitely illegal where I live.
Same, so I would legit throw that interview on purpose and waste their time for being such complete crapbags. I explained that I was in school and outlined my availability. He asked if I was fine skipping all of my classes on Thursdays because that's when they need me.
No? Will you pay me for the credit hours I'm missing? No? Then no.
That's a bold request for what I assume wasn't even a well-paying job, given that it was probably part-time while someone was in school. The mixture of employees. If there are lots of new employees, and if they have hiring ads, run. They likely rip through employees. Also, beware the places that have a lot of people who have been there forever and no one who has been working there for an intermediate amount of time. In my experience, it turned out that this place had a lot of old-timers and new hires, because the new people would be excluded and chewed up.
My current company has this problem, and us new hires have started having our own meetings while the old crew is in their endless 9 a.m. meeting every day. Our meetings go something like, has anyone ever actually seen the exemption list that Todd's going on about, or do we think it only exists in his head? Alright, battle plan for this week is to trick him into confirming or denying as many clients as possible are or aren't on the list. Then the next week we type up the document, pass it around to everyone, and bring in donuts to distract them from asking questions about where we got this document from.
I would watch this show. Years ago, I was about to be hired to work full-time in a car parts factory. I was at a second interview when the interviewer told me that upon being hired, I would need to see the doctor once every 3 months and sign a bunch of paperwork basically stating that if I got any respiratory or reproductive illness as a result of working around the fumes in that factory, that I understood and took full accountability for the consequences. I left and never went back. If I hear the culture is work hard, play hard, I'm out. That translates to, we beat you like a rented mule, and then throw a tragic Christmas party with a limited open bar. The interviewer was selling me on taking the job more than I was selling myself on getting the job. The interviewer gave me feedback on revising my resume, offered to advance me to the next interview round and coach me on how to handle the interview, etc. Never been offered that much support before or since. Really put me on guard and I turned down the job. About a year later, I ran into her while having lunch at a restaurant. I actually didn't recognize her at first because she had a big smile on her face, but was dead serious during my job interview. She admitted that company had been a stressful place to work. She now worked somewhere else and was much happier. I also backed out of a job opportunity because of similar reasons. I had a phone interview which seemed to go well. I was working full-time, so I had to schedule interviews and follow-ups around my current job. The people in the place that I interviewed wanted me to come in for a face-to-face, but I needed a couple of days to sort out my schedule at my current job. Over those next couple of days, they called me repeatedly, like 3 or 4 times a day, after I clearly told them that I would call them in a couple of days with some available times. That raised a lot of red flags, so I told them that I was no longer interested. I later found out the place was an absolute sweatshop and that the turnover there was terrible. Go figure. For me, it's the schedules. Someone offered me a job where I would often have to do 12-hour shifts and have meetings until 11 p.m. All of this for minimum wage. I'm 46, I can't do 12-hour shifts on my feet all day anymore. I'm 27 and due to a spinal injury, I'm lucky to be walking on my own again. I can't be on my feet for that length of time either, nor can I reliably lift 50 or more pounds or twist and bend over frequently. I'm fairly jacked due to a fixation on working out and sports conditioning before my injury, so when I explain that I can't do those things, I've gotten ridiculous and even nasty looks from interviewers, 2 of whom even called me out for just being lazy on the spot. I got up and walked out of both of those interviews immediately. If I was lazy, I wouldn't have this physique, and I'm already mortified by my own loss of mass due to being incapable of maintaining my workouts from 3 years ago. I don't need some middle manager thinking they know better than my freaking doctors do, and I certainly won't stand to be called lazy by someone who's never seen me work. They ask a lot of questions about something on your resume that isn't really relevant to the job you're applying for or of interest to you, and hint that they want you to do that as well. If it's something you don't mind or actually enjoy, that's fine, but be careful of getting locked into a role different from the one you interviewed for. Would you be willing to give up a few of your vacation days to help out some of your fellow co-workers finish their work? No. That's the first time I've seen this kind of proposal. Surely it can't be that common. Surely they can't ask you to give up time with your family. Oh wait, of course this must happen all the time now I think about it.
We do more with less. Translated,
we will overwork you and not pay you for it.
Ah yes, the first job I landed out of college was in a newsroom where the motto was, "Us four and no more," as in 1 sports reporter, 2 general assignment reporters, and 1 editor overseeing things. They refused to hire more people onto their staff even as the economy improved, and haven't given employees a raise since 2007. You also didn't have a set schedule and would cover things anywhere between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m., oftentimes at a few hours' notice, so working another job to make ends meet was impossible. How that place is still functioning is beyond me, especially since you can literally work fast food and make more money these days. We're a human-sized company with a great startup spirit, which translates to unpaid extra hours and micromanagement. That's like the definition of sugarcoating a really crappy job and wearing many hats. Had an interview where the interviewer said, "So you probably made, what, like 40K last year?" I had made double that, and I knew that if I went with this company, I'd only make a little more than 40K. If he hadn't said that, I probably would have taken the job. One thing I experienced was as follows. The manager met me at my job and said I seemed like I would have a knack for the line of work he's in. I, being unhappy in my current job, perked up hoping this would be a good transition opportunity. First red flag, he didn't tell me to come by an office or job location for an interview, but to meet up for lunch. Again, being young and naive, I didn't see anything wrong with that. Fast forward to the lunch. I began to notice what was going on, but didn't want to be rude. Second red flag, the guy tried not to mention the company name. Toward the end of the interview, he asked me, "So, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your interest level?" And I asked him the name of the company, and once he told me, I let him know that I was going to research the company to see if I wanted to continue with the process. Long story short, the company was Primerica, which in my opinion is the worst MLM scheme that I know of. If you do a little research, I'm sure you'll agree. My friend calls it a firing squad when you walk into an interview and you're seated in front of multiple people who just start shooting off questions at you. No conversation, no emotion, nothing to make you feel at ease. Strictly Q&A. After years at a company, I went on my first interview, very rusty. They wouldn't even ask me to expand on a few points. I was discouraged until I went on another one that was 1,000 times better. Just me and a few people sitting at a round table discussing my skills and such. I learned the former kind of interview is the one at a place where I don't want to work at. When the information the job interviewer gives you doesn't even match the job listing. When they make you sit at 2 different rooms for a good 30 minutes before it starts. Job hunting can be one of the most demoralizing processes to go through. When the HR interviewer has a huge fake smile, but while they lead me to the meeting room where the technical part will take place, I see a lot of burned out people with dead eyes and zombie-like faces. I study history and I work for a gardener to earn some money. Once I applied for a job in an archive, because the job would have a lot more to do with my major. The interview was terrible. They made me talk about gardening for nearly an hour. Interviews usually last 30 minutes where I live. I wanted to talk about my achievements in history because of the obvious connection to the archive, but all they wanted to know was how to trim trees and hedges. Also, they said that I'd have to be there at 8 a.m. to work and emphasized on how early that is and asked if I could handle that. When I said yes, they didn't believe me. I started gardening at 0750, so a lot of these weird questions. There's a big company in my province. Apparently they have pretty strict interviews, but in the end you have to meet the CEO, and you get to talk to him about whatever topic comes up. Friend of a friend talked about Clydesdales for 45 minutes. He got the job. I had an interviewer once that went ballistic on me when she found out I was engaged. She started off asking me where we were having the wedding and then went nuts, telling me that people have already gotten divorced over this position and I need to seriously consider it. I told her I'd already talked the position over with my fiancé and we were both prepared for it. She said I needed to talk it over again because there was no way we were ready. I noped the frick out of there after that. What the heck kind of position is this where the engagement status matters? What's the craziest thing that happened in a party during your high school and college years? I saw a 140-pound French-Canadian tear a sink out of a wall, run outside, and smash it to pieces against a tree. By the time we'd woken up the next morning, he'd already gone to Home Depot, brought a new sink, and installed it in the bathroom. French at night, Canadian by day. First they're sour, then they're sweet. One of my friends and I were at a house party. She drank 8 shots of tequila, one right after the other, and then proceeded to do the deed bareback up the butt on the front lawn while everyone watched. Not one of her finest moments. She's a Mormon now, apparently.
We had a pet raccoon for 2 days, long party, who would hang out with us. We thought he was a nice furry guy, but then he betrayed us. We were pretty drunk, he left, came back with friends, looted our house. I don't want to be anti-raccoon, but it's hard for me to trust them now. If you read this, Fritz, reconsider. Come back and we'll start over. Sly Cooper strikes again.
Hey, don't be raccoonist, dude.
I got drunk off my butt and wandered off to McDonald's, which was like a mile off campus. I don't remember even leaving, but I got a call a week later from the McDonald's saying I didn't get the job because I didn't go to the interview. I guess in my drunken state I got there and realized I had no money, so I must have sat there and applied for a job. Didn't remember a thing. They called to ask if I wanted to reschedule, but my reaction was, "What the frick are you talking about?" So they kindly informed me that they didn't need my assistance. The dude must have thought I was an idiot. I should have explained that better.
That's probably how most people start working at McDonald's.
It's a contract bound in blood. Their own blood. Got busted by a police helicopter while drinking at the lake. Spotlighted us and yelled at us over a bullhorn to stay while 6 officers, complete with 2 K9 units, came down to where we were, gathered everybody up, walked us to where we parked our cars, searched us, cited one kid for having green herb, and then let us all go. It was pretty surreal. In conclusion, drank a couple of Keystones, got a 5-star wanted level. I forgot to include my favorite part of the story, so I'd rode to the party with 4 of my good friends. All of us were 17, except one dude who was 18, but being idiot teenagers, we all smoked cigarettes. They pretty much caught us by surprise with the spotlight. I mean, seriously, who the frick expects a police helicopter? So we didn't have time to ditch anything. There were about 20 of us altogether, so when we were all being escorted back to our cars in a big group, us 4 managed to pass our smokes off to the one guy old enough to have them. When the cops searched us, my friend ends up pulling 5 packs of cigarettes and 2 or 3 cans of chewing tobacco out of his cargo shorts and sets them on the hood of his car. The cop is not impressed and is like, "Son, you want to tell me why you have so much tobacco?" And I crap you not, with a straight face, my friend just replies, "Because I like a little variety." In fairness to the cop, that answer sounds really shady. I can definitely understand why he thought you were covering for something. Last year, a few of my friends hosted a party at their house. The toilet got clogged and everyone just kept using it and layering toilet paper up, eventually rendering the toilet useless. So now everyone who had to pee did so in the bathtub. Same thing happened and now the bathtub is clogged. By the time any of the guys who lived there heard about it and walked upstairs to the bathroom to investigate, you have to walk past the laundry room to get there, they see a girl sitting on the dryer taking a tinkle in it. She claimed that multiple girls did it right before her, so she thought it was okay. In conclusion, girls are more disgusting than boys.
Why the frick didn't everyone take a tinkle outside?
It was a duplex-style house. They lived on the top floor and some other girls lived below them with no interior stairs between the two. So everyone who came had to come up the stairs outside and into the second floor. The cops busted it and said there were probably 200 plus people there, all on one floor and on the steps outside. Not a lot of space to move. Plus, we live so close to our uni's campus, the idea is to keep everyone inside to avoid both university and city police shutting it down. I had a friend who lucked into a very well-paying job right out of high school. He would pay for hotel rooms to party in, and as we all still lived with our parents, it was a cool thing to do, I guess. We had a party one night when Nickelback was playing in our city, and the opening band was The Trues. We didn't really care about the show, we just happened to want to party that night. Around 2 a.m. I left the room for some reason, and there was one super drunk dude carrying a bus bin full of booze. He insisted I was the guy from The Trues and followed me back to the room and got us all a bit drunk. We kept saying that we weren't The Trues, but he really thought we were, and at the end of the night, well, early morning, he left and said he was a huge fan and it was an honor to party with his favorite band, and he drove all the way from Ontario to see us. So somewhere in Ontario, there's a guy who tells all of his buddies that he partied with The Trues. Oh, and another time my buddy shattered a hotel room toilet with 2 lesbians.
Can you elaborate on that last bit, please?
Well, we were a bunch of awkward dudes fresh out of high school. Sometimes the hotel parties were absurd and crazy, and other times it was just a bunch of guys sitting around laughing at our buddy for buying a hotel room for a bunch of dudes. The lesbian night was one of the more intense parties. A friend of mine found a guy we went to high school with on the bus with 2 lesbians. They were the last people to arrive to the already overcrowded hotel room and there wasn't much space left. The lesbians hung out in the bathroom.
And the guy who brought the room, let's call him Jamie, really had to pee. They said something to him that involved him peeing in there while they watched. He went for it because beer, and nobody else went in there for about 20 minutes. After 20 or so, the three of them stumble out laughing and Jamie told me to go look. Sure enough, the whole gosh darn toilet was shattered. No blood or anything, but that thing was wrecked. He never explained how it happened, but I'm sure it was a good time. I think we got booted out of the hotel at like midnight that night, which was a record. To everyone in the hotel industry, I apologize for being that guest. We were young and dumb. I'm in the industry myself now, and anytime I deal with a real butthole guest, I know it's karma coming back. The host of the party decided to get into his unregistered car without license plates, without insurance, and without a license, and as drunk as the day is long. He drove the wrong way through a traffic circle, roundabout, and ran into a road sign. His best friend then screamed his name across the road, a neighbor called the cops, told them his name, etc. He was taken in and blood tested with 2.2 milliliters. He was let go, but he can't reapply for his license until 2018. Original post from 2014. Invite a friend over to drink late night. 10 minutes later, he calls us saying he's in the living room. He's nowhere to be found. I look outside to see 2 cop cars and his car in the neighbor's driveway. Turns out he walked to my friend's neighbor's house, drunk off his butt, asking where we were at like 2 a.m. A girl got drunk and passed out. Some guys pooped on her face and took pictures. This happened 2 to 3 years ago. She has a lot of Twitter followers now. High school, my house party. Guy asks me if he can shoot some other kid and shows me a gat. I tell him not on my property and not at my party. He apparently respected that. Later, he gets drunk and cuts his own stomach open, about 1 inch deep, 8 inches wide. You can clearly see each layer of skin and fat. He then goes around talking with it like it's Jim Carrey's rectum. We eventually convince him much later to go to the hospital, as he previously refused because he was afraid they were going to commit him to the psych ward. But by then, they told him it had been too long and they could only debride and dress it. He has a massive scar now, although he's much more sane and stable these days. 2 guys fought over a homely girl. One later pulled a knife on the other while he was asleep and attacked him through the neck. Stabber, blood alcohol content of around 0.3 if I recall correctly, has no memory of the event, and he did 15 years in jail. The stabbee had a blood clot, led to a stroke, led to debilitating brain damage. Took him about 10 years to recover his mental faculties. One of my best friends was thrown out of a window in the buff while doing the deed with a girl. Was he mid-coitus while in the air? I feel like you should have disclosed this. He gave a flying frick. So the whole story of this is that this is my best friend who just has women fall into his lap. Charisma out the wazoo. He goes to the club in town and winds up meeting a girl there. They dance it out, their feelings I guess, though a dance battle for supremacy could be cool, and he winds up going to a party with this girl. Well, apparently at some point at this party she told her friends that this other guy was trying something untoward towards her. And then later she dragged my friend upstairs for the doing of the deed. They're happily plowing away when the friends burst in, thinking that my friend is the other guy she talked about, committing the unspeakable act. Hijinks ensue, friend goes out the window, girl explains, and they let him back in. Now, I don't know if he kept his hard eggplant on this whole time, but I like to think that he came back in and then he came back in. This is also the guy who had a Ukrainian exotic dancer pull him into the shower to have fun with him. Some say she's still out there saving up funds to pull him into another bathroom and do it all again. I mean, I desperately want the entire life story of the defenestrated, charismatic Ukrainian dance seducer to be real, but dare I hope? It sounds too great to be true. I would kill for his autobiography if it is. Guy walked into the party and no one knew him. He walked around for a few minutes, then pulled out a piece, shot the refrigerator 2 times, and then calmly walked out. I live in Isla Vista, where basically Party Central is located on a street right on the cliffs over the ocean. I was at an AITA day party, everything is all good, people were intoxicated and having a good time. Then all of a sudden we hear screams and people start freaking out. Someone fell off the cliffs. Turns out it was my friend, who went over to his death. That was definitely one of the most crazy and traumatic experiences of my life, along with the shootings that happened here in Isla Vista last weekend. Moral of the story, don't pee off cliffs into the ocean when you are blackout drunk. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. College. Guy goes upstairs to pass out. Girl is already in the bed of his choosing. Amazing sounds of them doing the deed. Morning after, horrible screaming. Guy and girl turn out to be siblings. Was at a Halloween party and passed out on top of a cooler. I was awoken by my friend saying that the cops were there and we had to run. So my friend and I were dressed up as a geisha girl, Cinderella, Abby Cadabby, and Tinkerbell, all running down the road trying to avoid an MIP. We make it to a 7-Eleven and call my friend's boyfriend to take us home. He shows up dressed as Batman and intoxicated. He drives us home and on his way home gets pulled over and flees on foot. He then goes home and reports that someone in a Batman costume stole his Jeep and got away with it. Went to a house party freshman year of high school in Europe. It was this rich girl's apartment in a pretty high building, 10 to 12 stories. She lived on the top floor of this building, and after getting drunk and a little high, towel-y style, I started feeling pretty confident in myself. She had a small balcony, and it was next to her neighbor's balcony, which was about a 2-meter gap of nothing all the way down in between. In my drunken stupor, I decided that moment would be the first time I said, "Hold my beer." I stood up on the handrail and jumped across to the other balcony and back completely drunk. The second jump really put how high up I was into perspective, when I looked down in the middle of the jump. Landed safely, but gosh, that could have ended poorly. Happened leaving a party. High school. 3 of my white friends went to juvenile detention and I didn't, even though I was in the same car busted for green herb. I'm black, but I'm also a smooth talker. More details, it was all their stuff and I barely even touched it, so I wasn't willing to take equal punishment for cruising with them. I was like, "Please officer, I haven't touched it, and I still have a curfew. If you're going to hold me, I need you to let me contact my parents." They called my mum to come pick me up. Friends say I wimped out. I say I played my cards right. Those officers probably tell that story all the time right before they say, "See, I'm not racist." "Oh, that one was totally cool. It was so weird." I was messing around with my friend, beatboxing and white boy dancing to ourselves, and some black guys came over and started rapping to our beatbox. Then someone got shot and I ran to my car, but on my way a pizza place, Diamond Pizza, was closing and gave me free pizza. Yes, this happened in Philadelphia. On a break from college, my friends all got together for a small party. One of my best friends brought her new boyfriend that none of us had met. I guess he was really nervous and trying to show off because he challenged all the guys there to a shot contest in which he claimed he could take 3 shots for every one they took and still not get drunk. Well, you can imagine how that ended up. He got obliterated. Long story short, he ended up breaking a marble table, how? Choking out his girlfriend, our friend right in front of us, and ultimately pulling a piece on the guys that tried to drive him home, essentially creating a small-scale hostage situation in front of the house. Scariest night of my life, not knowing if my friends were going to get shot as we were hiding inside the locked house. Luckily, the cops came with no problems, and he spent a week or 2 in jail. I've got a few from just one night. My best friend, our substance dealer, was having a huge house party. Probably 60 to 70 of us there, nearly everyone tripping balls. Long story short, the cops have us all lined up against a wall, chewing butt and searching our pockets. Cop finds a little balloon full of white powder on my buddy next to me. "What's this, huh? You gonna tell me what this is?" My friend, screaming and spitting in the cop's face, "It's flour, you frickin' pig!" I was trying so hard not to laugh I was shaking. It was flour. We were stuffing it in balloons and playing with it. Almost 25 years later, we're still laughing about it. "You get the crime lab results back on that balloon?" "Yes, sir. They said they made gravy with it." I saw a guy on substances eat some other guy's ear. We were having the good old parties back in college when a guy went crazy. He literally ripped the dude's ear off and started munching on that little fricker. Someone called the cops and he was arrested. 2 years later, he was arrested again when a number of minors were found in his basement. Watched a girl get launched through the back of a car window. The evils of alcohol, man. It was a fight between a friend and her significant other at the time. Events like this happened frequently when they drank together, though never this serious. We were all out in the street. They were screaming at each other and swinging around violently. He just picked her up and threw her, through the windshield. This guy was pretty big, but my friend is also 5'1", maybe 100 pounds soaking wet. Somehow, she didn't press charges, but the police did. Lots of people were subpoenaed, but because everyone was too hammered to correctly or accurately recount the incident, it got thrown out. Oofed. When I hear about instances like this, I can see why so many people think that green herb should be the default party substance over alcohol. Whole new set of problems, but stories like this make you think at least the aggression would be toned down. The foreign exchange student from Sweden took too much of a certain substance and ended up dancing in the living room with his pants and briefs pulled down. There he was in the living room of a massive party with his tiny little eggplant swinging back and forth. He was kicked out and kept coming back dancing with his pants at his ankles. He came back the next day to apologize. It was his first week being a foreign exchange student at our school. Yes, a meme was made. The image is literally ingrained into my psyche. His eggplant was so small. I was at a going-away party for somebody I didn't know very well, but I knew many of the people that were there and they had invited me. There were maybe 30 to 40 people there. About 2 hours into the party, a few of my friends and I decided to go and have a smoke on the front porch. I met the person that we were having the party for, I'll call him Chris for the sake of this story, and we seemed to get along nicely. Chris was a good guy. After a few minutes of conversation, he walked back into the house, leaving me and my buddies outside. That's where everything went nuts. These two girls had shown up to the party and nobody seemed to want them around. I didn't know them personally, but I knew that they were not the kind of people you'd want to associate with. I heard some arguing just behind me at the entrance of the house, a few feet away between the girls that just arrived and Chris. Chris was asking them very nicely to leave the party as they were causing a disturbance to the other guests. These two girls were having absolutely none of that and continued to scream utterly stupid crap into his face without listening to what he had to say. This went on for about a minute or so I started to ignore what was going on and just continued to talk to friends. Suddenly I heard a scream and somebody yelled, "You stabbed him, you crazy freaking B-word!" I quickly turned around and one of the girls had stuck a knife into his stomach and there was blood everywhere. The girl pulled the knife out of him and began to run down the street. The police came and rushed Chris to the hospital, but unfortunately he didn't make it and died in the ambulance. The girl was caught after about 2 days in the city next to mine. I went to court as a witness, as did many others, and the girl is getting 15 years in jail. I wish she got life because she deserves to rot. Come July and it will be 2 years ago that this happened now. In conclusion, I went to a party where someone was killed over asking these girls to leave his own going-away party. A friend of mine thought it would be hilarious to take a dookie hanging from a tree. So he climbed up about 25 feet, dangled by his legs around a branch, then proceeded to drop a huge fudge dragon right into the back of his white t-shirt that he was wearing. Rave party in a church. Some dreadlocked dude in a Jesus costume did the deed with a girl in the priest booth above the DJ stage. I was outside peeing in some nice bushes when I looked up and holy frick, Aurora Borealis. Living in Washington, this has never happened before. I proceeded to run inside to tell everyone, but they thought I was just drunk. In their defense, I was, and very enthusiastic, and making crap up. Their loss. Aurora Borealis. At this time of year, at this time of day, in this part of the country, localized entirely within your kitchen. So this one time, I went down to visit my friends in Cork. 2 of them were twins, and throwing an 18th. It was a great night, and everyone got really drunk. Around 4 a.m., everyone started to look for a place to sleep. Unfortunately, one of the rooms containing 3 beds and a few sleeping bags had been occupied by one of the twins and his girlfriend. So 14 of us had to all pile into one double bed. I was sleeping between one of the twins and another friend of mine. He was talking non-stop with some girl, but I didn't mind because I had somewhere to sleep. About 3:30, I'm talking to my friend when his face suddenly turns white. From behind me, I hear a slow creaking sound. It slowly gets louder. I was in shock. After a minute, he stops and I hear a sigh. I hold up my hand and he high-fives me, and that is how my best friend lost his virginity. In conclusion, friend lost virginity in a bed with 14 people, followed by a high five. In high school, after our track team won the county title, which we weren't supposed to win, we all wanted to get really drunk, but had nowhere to do so. That's when one of the seniors suggested that we drink at the abandoned house across the street from his. It wasn't really abandoned, it was fully furnished, just didn't have electricity on, and the owners had been MIA for a few months according to him. The party itself was pretty cool, a majority of the people brought lanterns and flashlights along with the hooch. It started getting out of hand, and at its peak about 150 people were there, which isn't really huge, but for our high school that was quite large. That's about when the cops showed up, which was standard practice for our parties. We all booked it, and since most of us were in peak physical condition, the cops pretty much gave up chasing us after a block. All of us got away, except my best friend. In his escape, he jumped out of a first-story window and landed on a cop. He pretty much just gave up at that point. Someone yelled, "Fusro da," and then loudly crapped themselves.
Please elaborate.
The guy had drunk like 7 shots of vodka in an hour. He had been giggling at the slice of the pizza he had dropped on the floor and then started crawling around on the floor. He yelled that and then crapped himself. It was pretty funny, but the smell was awful.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.